What if Naruto was a Kryptonian Part 1? Red Sun. The Other Kryptonian by Cho Jae Hulk P9. Start. On the planet Earth, the world was home to the human race but soon became home to another species that would make a huge impact. In the town of Smallville, as the name implies, it was a small town so nothing too exciting happened. It was a very modest farming town. Crops of corn could be seen for miles and the people were very nice and hospitable, like many rural towns. The only thing of excitement that was happening was the Smallville High School homecoming football game. In the town, one couple, Jonathan and Martha Kent, were in town for some chores. They walked into the local florist shop to see a young 3-year-old girl wearing a princess costume and holding a wand. Afternoon, Nell. Jonathan said as Nell Potter, owner of the store and aunt to the Lana Lang, turned around to see the Kents. Jonathan. Martha. What a surprise. What brings the reclusive Kents to town? Nell asked. Tulips. Red ones, if you have them. Martha said. What about a tiger orchid? Nell asked. No thanks. Martha has her heart set on tulips. Jonathan said. Yes, well, they are an uncomplicated flower. Nell said as Martha rolled her eyes and saw Lana. That is a beautiful dress, Lana. Are you a princess? Martha asked as she kneeled down. I'm a fairy princess. Lana replied. Hey, where are her parents? Jonathan asked. Oh, they're at the homecoming game with everyone else. I'm being the good aunt. Nell said. Do you want to make a wish? Lana asked Martha. I would love to make a wish. Martha said. Okay, abracadabra. Lana said as she touched her wand onto Martha's head. After they left the flower store, Jonathan got some feed while Martha sat in the truck with a look on her face that Jonathan recognized. I know what you wished for. Jonathan said. I see a little face. It's all I ever wanted. Martha said as Jonathan leaned over and kissed her and they heard people cheering and car horns honking. Hey, looks like Smallville won again. Jonathan said with a smile as the team and parents cheered. Jonathan then drove back to the farm but after about 10 minutes, something happened. Meteors fell to the town as people screamed and ran for cover. Cars, buildings and fields were hit as some people were killed by the meteor impacts. What's happening, Jonathan? Martha yelled as a meteor hit the road and Jonathan tried to brake but the pickup crashed off the road. The truck was flipped over as Jonathan and Martha were sore but alive. Jonathan then saw something he couldn't believe. Martha. Jonathan said, getting her attention, and she saw 2 young boys squatting by the truck. One was about 3 years old, black hair and blue eyes and was naked. The other was about 4, had spiky blonde hair, blue eyes, and 6 whisker marks on his face, but was wearing clothes that were a little too small for his size. Jonathan and Martha got out of the truck and followed the trail in the ground left by the meteor. Martha was carrying the naked boy wrapped in a blanket they had in the truck while Jonathan was carrying the other. Kids just don't fall out of the sky, Martha. Jonathan said. Then where did they come from? Martha asked. I don't know. But they must have parents. Jonathan said as they saw the vessel that carried the both of them in the dirt. Well, if they do, they're definitely not from Kansas. Martha said. Sweetheart, we can't keep them. What are we going to tell people? We found them out in a field. Jonathan asked. We didn't find them. They found us. Martha said. Line break XXXXX. Time had passed since the arrival of 2 small boys in a cornfield in Smallville, Kansas. Those 2 boys were Naruto and Clark Kent, the adopted sons of Jonathan and Martha Kent. They grew up normal boys but knew they were different, born with special powers that no one else had. Their parents did their best to raise them with important values and that their powers were to be used for good and to help people, but they should be careful about who knows about their powers. Their childhood and adolescence was interesting to say the least, between meteorite-infected teenagers who developed strange abilities, to the growing realization and discovery of their alien heritage. The 2 boys quickly learned as much as they could. Their powers grew and they discovered new abilities like heat vision, super breath and X-ray vision. They managed to make some friends who knew their secret, like Chloe Sullivan, Pete Ross and Lana Lang. Clark and Naruto had a habit of saving them often from the crypto villains that popped up every now and then during their high school years. Some really weird ones too, like Bug Boy or the Dichotic Multiplier who tried to go out with Lana and Chloe at the same time. Eventually, life kept on going and their paths crossed with Jor-El and Minato, Clark and Naruto's biological fathers. They discovered that they weren't biological brothers but their fathers were very close along with Jor-El's brother, Zor-El. When Krypton was on the verge of destruction, they put the plan to send their children to Earth to ensure the survival of their race. They put them on the path to the crystals of knowledge that created the Fortress of Solitude in the North Pole. They said that Naruto and Clark were sent to Earth to protect mankind and to save them from the Earth's ultimate destruction. Well, they could have been more specific about that last part. Soon, tragedy struck and Jonathan Kent was killed due to a heart attack. His heart gave out just as Naruto and Clark finished college. Naruto and Clark felt responsible because they knew Jonathan developed heart problems after he made a deal with Jor-El to bring Clark back after his summer on Red Kryptonite. Clark had left for Metropolis after an incident with his parents. He destroyed the ship that carried him and Naruto to Earth because he didn't want to accept the destiny Jor-El had in place for him. He managed to destroy the ship with kryptonite, but the shockwave put Naruto into a coma and caused their mother to have complications with her coming baby and the baby died. Clark felt responsible, so he left and Jonathan was given powers to bring him back, but they took a toll on his human body. This was a very difficult moment for the two brothers as both left on their own journeys to sort through their emotions and to get some space. Clark went on his path while Naruto went on his own. Last Naruto had heard from him, Clark was supposed to be working on some fishing boat in Alaska. Naruto, well, he had traveled the world for a bit to see what was out there. Helped to be able to fly. 2013. Naruto now was 28 years old and he was currently in Central City. Naruto was working for the Random House Books publishing company and was on a business trip doing some business with the Central City news station and the publishing company's location in the city on the new books being released. Naruto enjoyed it, it was fun work and it allowed him to keep a roof over his head. He was going to be in Central City for a few more days and then head back to Smallville. Naruto just finished with a meeting and was going to get some coffee from Jitters. Naruto walked into the store and stood in line for his coffee. He had grown since being a little kid and now stood at an impressive 6 feet 3, tall and muscular. His spiky blonde hair had grown out and his whisker birthmarks had faded so they were almost gone. He was currently wearing a red t-shirt, dark blue jeans, sneakers and a black button-up. He stood in line and looked at the TV that was playing the local news about the unveiling of the Star Labs particle accelerator tonight. Can I help? Who's next? The barista said as Naruto walked up and the girl barista blushed. What can I get you? Well, Naruto said as he looked at her name tag. Iris West. Iris. What's the house specialty? Well, we've got a very special 2 coffee blend with cream and sugar. So addictive, you'll want 3. Iris joked as Naruto chuckled. I'll take 1, please. Naruto said as Iris smiled. Coming right up. Iris said as she got his drink and Naruto took out some money. Iris then came back with his order. Here you go. Thank you. Naruto said as he paid her and tipped her nicely. Naruto left with his coffee and saw her phone number written on it as well. Naruto chuckled as he took a sip and walked out of Jitters and took a walk. As he was walking, he got a call from his cell and saw it was his mom. Hey, Mom. Naruto said as he took a sip of coffee. So, how's the farm? Shelby giving you any trouble? No, she's fine. She misses you and Clark though. Martha said as Naruto nodded. Don't worry. When I finish up in Central City, I'm coming home. Have you heard from Clark? Naruto asked. Yes, he's actually on his way home. Apparently he left his job in Alaska after the oil rig incident. Martha said. Oh, that was him. I heard about that. The people rescued from the oil rig said that someone stopped a collapsing rig from crushing them. Clark should be a bit more discreet. Naruto said as he took a sip of coffee. Well, you're not so better yourself, young man. Remember the footage of the blur in Metropolis a year ago? Martha said as Naruto cleared his throat. I'll admit, Jimmy is a good photographer if he managed to catch me mid-rescue. So, have you heard from Kara? Naruto asked. Kara Zor-El was Clark's biological cousin. Zor-El was Jor-El's brother and Kara was sent to Earth to look after Clark, but when her ship left Krypton, it was caught in the destructive wave and sent her ship into the Phantom Zone. It wasn't until years later that her ship was set free somehow and arrived on Earth, but she remained an 11-year-old girl while Naruto was 18 and Clark was 17. To help Kara adjust and to aid her alibi of being Clark and Naruto's cousin, Kara stayed with the Danvers family. A family that worked for Virgil Swan before his death. Virgil Swan was an astrophysicist who had recorded and archived all the data the day that Naruto and Clark arrived on Earth. He had information on Krypton and translated the message their parents left them about using their powers to protect Earth. He then helped them however he could, with their new abilities and with any questions they could have on Krypton. He eventually passed away, but the Danvers family were people that Naruto and Clark trusted and worked with after Dr. Swan's death. Kara stayed with them to adjust to Earth and to help her control her powers. Yes, she's doing just fine in National City. I heard she just landed a part-time job working at Catco Media while she finishes college. Martha said. Well, she's going to need all the help she can get. I heard from Chloe that Cat Grant is ruthless and very hard to work for. Naruto said. Well, she'll be just fine. So how is Central City? Martha asked. It's okay. Busy and full of smart people. The particle accelerator is supposed to turn on tonight, so the city's full of geniuses wanting to see it work. I might go see it tonight, you never know. It might be nice to see something game-changing that doesn't have to do with kryptonite or Clark and I. Naruto said as Martha chuckled. Well, have fun. And I'll see you home in a few days. Martha said. Bye mom, love you. Naruto said as the call ended. Naruto spent the rest of the day walking around the city and enjoying some alone time. Naruto then made his way to Star Labs to watch the unveiling of the particle accelerator. Naruto stood in the crowd of people as Dr. Harrison Wells took to the podium to speak. Thank you. My name is Harrison Wells. Tonight, the future begins. The work my team and I will do here will change our understanding of physics, will bring about advancements in power, advancements in medicine. And trust me, that future will be here faster than you think. Harrison Wells said as everyone applauded. Naruto applauded but then stopped as his super hearing picked up some chatter. A thief stole a purse and someone chased after them. Naruto saw the thief leave the celebration, so he went to stop him. He saw the thief run away from Star Labs to one of the alleyways across the street and saw another guy chase after him. Naruto followed them and saw the thief knock the other guy on his ass. Alright, kid, you don't have to do this, alright. Just give me back my friend's bag and we'll call it even. Barry said as the thief then sucker punched him in the gut and ran, but before he could turn to leave, Naruto super sped to him and knocked the thief against a fence and knocked him out. Naruto then left the purse on the ground and left. Barry blinked as he just saw a blur take the thief out and leave. He looked around to see no one except Iris run up to him. Naruto looked at them from the alley down the block and smiled. He decided to turn in for the night and left for his motel room. Naruto was laying in bed and eating some Big Belly burger while listening to some music. He was relaxing when all of a sudden, he heard a loud boom. He stood up and looked out his window to see a huge pillar of energy erupt and shoot up into the sky, and then a wave of energy spread out through Central City and the power cut out. Naruto quickly grabbed his jacket and super sped out of his room into the pouring rain and booming thunderstorm. He then flew into the sky and was heading straight towards the center of energy when he saw a bolt of lightning strike through the roof of a building. Naruto flew there first to check and see if anyone was hit. He flew through the hole in the window and saw the wreck of a lab with chemicals all over the floor and a man unconscious, probably hit by the lightning. Naruto went down to check on him and saw it was the guy he saved from the thief. Naruto listened for a heartbeat and still heard one, so he quickly grabbed the guy and flew him towards the nearest hospital. After dropping him off at the hospital, he quickly flew towards Star Labs to help people. He saved people from falling debris, and got people out of the lab buildings. He even saved Dr. Wells when his legs were caught under debris. After the event, word spread and people called it an unforeseen disaster. 23 people were killed because of the particle accelerator explosion and one person was in a coma. It would take a lot for the city to recover, but Naruto helped as much as he could until he wasn't needed anymore. Line break XXXXX. Naruto soon returned to Smallville after his business trip in Central City was over. His cab pulled up to the Kent farm and Naruto got out. He smiled as he saw his mom and Shelby planting some flowers and Clark working on the tractor. Shelby saw him and ran up to him as Naruto walked up to the house. Naruto smiled as he pet Shelby on the head as his mom and Clark smiled. Well, look at who has grown up. Martha shouted as Naruto smiled and hugged her as she hugged back. Good to see you too, Mom. Naruto said as he then hugged Clark. How have you been, Clark? Rescue any oil rig workers recently? Naruto asked as Clark chuckled. Well, what about you? Save any other scientists? Clark joked as Naruto chuckled. No more than usual. Naruto said as they walked in. Naruto put all his stuff away in his room and was about to go help Clark with the tractor when he saw a small box on his dresser. Naruto walked over and opened it to reveal a small metal item with a spiral-like sun on it, with a small string. It was Naruto's control key for his part of the fortress. When they got the crystals that formed the Fortress of Solitude, there were two key ports for Kryptonian house keys. Clark had one with his house symbol and Naruto had his. Even though the Fortress of Solitude was created years ago, neither one of them put their key in. Dr. Swan's last message before he died was that the Kryptonian keys would unlock the last part of their journey to protect the Earth and they should only activate them in the fortress when they were ready. Naruto took the key and put it around his neck and left to go help Clark with the tractor. Naruto replaced the old tires on the tractor while Clark fixed the engine. So, Clark, have you spoken to Chloe or Lois since you've been back? Naruto asked as Clark looked at him. No, not yet. I was gonna make a trip to Metropolis later. See how they're doing, Clark said as he finished tightening a bolt. Other than the occasional check-up from Lois or Chloe, I haven't seen them yet. You think they'll be angry? Naruto asked. I don't think so. They knew why we left. Clark said as Naruto nodded. Clark then noticed Naruto had his key. You have your key. Yeah, Naruto said as he held it. You'd think after all these years it'd be easier to hold, but I'm still afraid of it. Me too, Clark said. You think we're ready to finally embrace our destiny? Naruto asked as Clark put his tools away and took off his gloves. No, but then again, I'm not sure when I would feel ready. Clark said as he chuckled. You know, in high school, I would have never thought that we'd have to worry about this now. I know. We tried to go through high school as normal as possible and push back against our destiny, and look what happened. Naruto said as they remembered the events of the past. Clark's brief stint in Metropolis under the influence of red kryptonite, the brief time they were brainwashed, and when the second meteor shower came to Smallville. And now I wonder what will happen if we do go through with it. Clark said as Naruto nodded. It's a coin flip, but we do it together. Naruto said. We'll go to the fortress tomorrow after we head to Metropolis and mend some fences with Chloe. Clark said. And Lois? Naruto said. Right. Lois. Clark replied in a tone that suggested he didn't leave things in a good place with her. Look, I know about how you left things with her, but you're gonna have to face her sooner or later. Naruto said. Yeah, easy for you to say. You don't have to face Lois's wrath. Clark said. How mad could she be? Sure, you sort of fell off the grid even though you were technically dating, but come on. She knows why you left. At least you kept in contact with her, right? Naruto asked as Clark didn't respond. You didn't. Geez, I still kept in contact with her and Chloe. She's gonna eat you alive tomorrow. Thanks. Clark replied as Naruto left to go fix the irrigation ditch. The next day, Naruto and Clark helped their mom with whatever last-minute things she needed and then made their way to Metropolis. They super sped to Metropolis and were careful to stop in an alley with no cameras so no one saw them. They walked into the Daily Planet and to the main reporting floor where reporters were at their cubicles or running around the floor to flush out stories and reports. There were radios set up all over the room, tuned to broadcasts, and TVs with all the important news stations shown. Naruto and Clark exited the elevator and saw everyone was pretty busy working on some stories. The Daily Planet from Man of Steel. Wow, busy. Naruto said. Welcome to the world of journalism. Clark said. Your world. I gave up on writing for the Torch sophomore year, just helping with layouts. You were the reporter. Naruto said. I wouldn't really call what I did reporting. Clark said. Hey, you had some good articles in the Torch. Naruto said as they tried to find Chloe and saw her at her desk on the phone with her computer filled with dozens of photos of the disaster from the Central City Particle Accelerator explosion. Yes, I understand that FEMA doesn't advertise, but it's been 2 weeks since the Star Labs Particle Accelerator explosion, and the Daily Planet would like a comment on what FEMA and the government plans to do if there is fallout from the explosion. Chloe said as she twirled her pen around. Well, the Daily Planet is not like Central City News, and frankly, we're concerned over the huge response FEMA has taken about the explosion, and the people need to know the truth if people are in danger. Yes. Thank you. Thank you for the follow-up. Chloe said as she hung up. Still didn't say anything. Hard at work as ever, Chloe. Chloe heard as she turned and saw Naruto and Clark. Naruto, Clark. Chloe said as she got up and hugged Naruto as Naruto hugged back. It's so good to see you guys, again. Chloe said as she then hugged Chloe. It's good to see you, Chloe. Clark said. My good. I didn't think I'd ever see you guys again. Chloe said. Chloe, we weren't dead. We just needed some time. Naruto said. And I see you guys got it if you're back. Well, it's great to see you guys again. I can't tell you how boring it's been with you guys gone. Chloe said as she sorted through some papers on her desk. Work keeping you busy? Clark asked. You don't know the half of it. I'm not sure how much you guys have been keeping up with the news, but a lot of interesting stuff has happened in the past few years. Chloe said as she took some files and walked over to the circulation desk as Clark and Naruto followed her. I mean, not as interesting as finding out your two best friends are aliens from another planet, but interesting still. Really? Naruto asked. Yeah, I mean it seems like ever since you guys took your time off, the world got a little weirder. Check this out. Chloe said as she dropped off files at the circulation desk and went to the file cabinet that held the old issues of the planet. This is the paper from a year ago. She showed it to them and the headline read, Earthquake Devastates Starling City. A year ago, a 7.6 magnitude earthquake devastated part of Starling City, which is odd because Starling City isn't on any known fault line. And it was revealed that the earthquake was man-made by a guy named Malcolm Merlin. Chloe said. Yeah, CEO of Merlin Global Group. Clark said. Which did business with Queen Industries, whose former CEO, Moira Queen, announced being complicit in the act and that Merlin was a psychotic archer. Chloe said as she then turned the page to show a police sketch of the Hood. And Starling City also has its own vigilante. The Hood? Naruto asked. Not very original or catchy. Clark said. Well, I heard from my sources from Starling City that the police are calling him the Arrow and even some of the police might be working with him. Which is strange since he was a killer who liked to put arrows in people, but now he's stopping crimes and taking out killers. Chloe said. Great for Starling City. Clark said. And in Gotham City, they have their own vigilante as well. It started years ago as rumor, but it was confirmed 7 years ago on Christmas when the news finally got footage of him stopping some guy in clown makeup. Chloe said as she showed them the headline from that story, The Batman is real. The Bat of Gotham stops Mad Clown. The Bat of Gotham stops Mad Clown. Naruto said. I can't believe I just said that. The Batman is real. And apparently, he's got some serious toys to take down bad guys. I've done some digging of my own, discreetly, and I think I've narrowed down the possible list of who he is. Chloe said. Chloe, why are you telling us this? Clark asked as Chloe looked at them. Well, I just thought, I mean, don't you want to know what other heroes are out there? I figured, you guys coming back meant you guys were ready to go back to work. Chloe said. Work? Naruto asked. You know, like we did before you guys left. Finding crimes and locking up crypto villains. Chloe said. Chloe, we are back and we're ready to get back in the game. We appreciate all the work you've done, but do you want us to create a league or something? Naruto asked. I guess I just got a little carried away. It's just that, I kind of missed doing what we used to do. Back before you guys left. Stopping bad guys, solving crimes, made me feel like a superhero, and from the looks of it, you guys aren't alone in the world anymore. Chloe said. Besides, with you guys back, I'm sure I'll have some interesting things to write about. I heard some whispers about a lot of mysterious saves in Central City during the particle accelerator explosion by something that flew in the sky. Guilty as charged. Naruto said. Well, we're working our way back to a status quo. Step 1 was coming to see you. Clark said as Chloe smiled. And I'm glad, but I'm not the only one who missed you guys. Chloe said as they saw Jimmy Olsen talking to one of the layout people. Jimmy Olsen from Supergirl TV show. Jimmy. Look who's back. Chloe said as Jimmy turned to see Naruto and Clark. Jimmy Olsen was a good friend that they first met during their years in college. When Chloe was interning at the planet, she met Jimmy, who was working as a photojournalist intern back then. Naruto, Clark, good to see you guys, again. Jimmy said as he walked over and shook their hands. And it's James, Chloe. Not Jimmy. Right. Chloe said. It's good to see you guys back. I heard you both took some time to travel. James said. Some time to clear out heads, but it's good to be back. And I see you've finally been made a full-time photojournalist. Congratulations. Clark said. Thanks. Perry couldn't resist my photos. So, Clark, you thinking of working here at the planet now that you're back? Chloe said you're a good reporter. James said as Chloe smiled. We'll see. Have you guys seen Lois? Clark asked as they nodded and pointed to the cubicle near Perry White's office. Lois was on the phone and working on a story as Clark cleared his throat and got nervous. Clark then took a deep breath and walked over to her. How much you guys want to bet she's really angry? Naruto asked. $10 says she slaps him. Chloe said. Deal. James said as they watched. They saw Clark walk over to Lois's desk and get her attention. They saw Lois turn and see Clark with a look of shock, happiness and anger. She stood up as Clark spoke to her and Lois then walked up to him and slapped him in the face. Everyone in the office was silent as they just saw Lois slap Clark and then walk away. Oh, that'll leave a mark. James said as he took out $10 and paid Chloe. Thank you. Clark will have a lot of work to get back into Lois's good graces. Chloe said as James left to the picture room to check on his photos. So, if step 1 of getting back in the game was coming to see your friends, what's step 2? Buy yourself a costume and patrol the city. Not exactly. Step 2 is to get some more answers. Naruto said as he took his command key out from under his shirt and Chloe knew what he meant. Wow, you guys think you're ready for that? I mean, the closest thing you guys have done to accepting your Kryptonian heritage was creating the fortress. Are you ready for whatever else is in there? Chloe asked. Maybe. Frankly, after hearing Jor-El's and my biological father's disembodied voice from an ancient Native American cave with vague statements about destiny, I want to know exactly what I'm supposed to do. Naruto said as Chloe nodded. Well, I think you already know the answer to that. You've been doing it since freshman year of high school. Saving people. But maybe, you're ready to do it on a global scale. Chloe said. Although, you might want to think about wearing a mask. Yeah, like that's gonna happen. Naruto said. I'm serious. If you leave your face exposed, people will recognize you and put 2 and 2 together. If not a mask, then you will have to change your appearance when you're in costume, or would you rather change how you are out of costume? Chloe asked. Wow, both are such great options. Naruto said sarcastically. Well, no one said being a superhero was gonna be easy. But I'm here to help should you need it. Chloe said. Thanks, Chloe. Naruto said as Chloe smiled. What are best friends for? Chloe replied. Line break XXXXX. After Lois slapped Clark, Naruto casually introduced himself and got a warmer welcome than Clark because he had kept in touch. Clark still had a lot of work to do to be in good terms with Lois. Naruto believed they broke up, although Lois wasn't exactly good with relationships and labels. Clark managed to get to a place where Lois would talk to him without slapping him. Now that they had said their hellos with the people they needed to, they flew towards the Arctic and to the Fortress of Solitude. They landed near the entrance to the fortress, which had a giant wall of ice blocking it. Naruto walked towards the wall and pressed his hand on it, and the spot where he touched glowed. The wall then came down and Clark and Naruto entered the fortress. They walked into the middle of the fortress where 2 crystal podiums were located with small indents that would fit a command key. Naruto and Clark walked forward and each stood in front of a podium and looked at each other. Ready? Naruto asked. Ready. Clark said as they took off their command keys and placed them near the slots and inserted the keys. The fortress hummed and rumbled as 2 walls of the fortress shook and the Kryptonian symbol from their keys were burned onto the walls, the S for Clark and spiral-like sun for Naruto. Then the crystal walls with the symbols retracted into the floor to reveal 2 new areas of the fortress. Along with the 2 new areas, the floor moved apart and new strange-looking computers and screens appeared and decorated the fortress. Good luck. Naruto said as he walked into his section of the fortress and Clark walked into his. Naruto walked into his side and saw the walls of the fortress begin to rearrange, and then a wall came down and a small robot appeared before Naruto. Greeting, Null Auto. I am NC-967, your personal assistance drone. I will help run and maintain the fortress. Should you need anything, all you must do is ask. The drone said. How come this is the first time I'm seeing you? Naruto asked. When you and Kal-El gathered the crystals of knowledge and created the fortress, we were put in standby mode until your command keys were inserted. Then we were brought online. We shall help you in whatever manner you need. The drone replied as he left to go check on the other parts of the fortress. Naruto then turned around and saw a man who looked a lot like Naruto but much older. He was wearing some kind of weird robe outfit with the same sun figure from Naruto's key on the chest. If only Kushina could see you now. Seeing you there grown into an adult. The man said. Who are you? Naruto asked. I am your father, Null Auto. My name is Minato. Minato said. So this is what you look like. Frankly, After hearing your disembodied voice in the cave, I didn't know what you looked like. Naruto said. I am his memory, his consciousness. I was brought out when you placed your command key within the fortress. Minato said. I am programmed with all his memories and knowledge within the fortress. Knowledge of over 10,000 worlds. I have so many questions. Why did you send Clark and I to Earth? What happened to Krypton? Naruto asked. You and Kal-El came from Krypton, a planet with a much harsher environment and gravity than Earth's. Minato said as the holographic image of Krypton appeared. Long ago, in an era of expansion, our race encountered and gathered information on hundreds of planets and encountered different alien races. Krypton acted as a central hub for the galaxy. Krypton's technology advanced at an extraordinary rate and soon began to act as peacekeepers throughout the galaxy, arresting criminals and keeping the peace. We helped establish colonies on distant planets and expanded our race. For 100,000 years, Krypton was at peace. Then what happened? Naruto asked. Civil war erupted on Krypton. A large rebel group rebelled against the ruling council of Krypton. War ravaged Krypton, killing millions. With war, our resources were diminished and the colonies perished. Minato said. How could that happen? Naruto asked. Despite how advanced Krypton was, it wasn't perfect. It's not that much different from Earth, in some respects. Civil war ravaged Krypton, despite the best attempts made to keep the peace. Myself, Jor-El and Zor-El did our best, but sadly it wasn't enough. The Council of Krypton was adamant to stay in power and exhausted our resources. As a result, our planet's core became unstable. Eventually, Krypton's military leader, General Zod, attempted a coup to take power from the council. But by then it was too late. Jor-El, Zor-El and I foresaw the eventual destruction of Krypton, and we took steps to ensure your survival. Minato said as he and Naruto walked through the fortress as the fortress showed holographic recreations of Krypton's final moments. Surely, Clark, Kara and I can't be the only ones alive. There were 2 other Kryptonians we encountered. Granted they were homicidal, but there has to be more of us. Naruto said as Minato nodded. We only sent the 3 of you to Earth. Other Kryptonians are locked in the Phantom Zone, but it is possible. Minato said. How come you didn't come with us? Naruto asked as Minato exhaled. We couldn't, no matter how much we wanted to. No matter how much we loved you. Your mother and I were a product of the failures of a world as much as Zod was, tied to its fate. We did not want that for you. You are as much a child of Earth as you are of Krypton's. You can help embody the best of both worlds. A dream your mother and I died to preserve. Minato said as he raised his arm and part of the fortress wall came down and opened up a tube. The tube opened up to reveal a special suit with Naruto's red sun spiral on the chest. Special forearm guards and gloves and a belt. It had a dark crimson color scheme with dark blue streaks in the sun's design. Imagine the Man of Steel suit but no cape. The people of Earth and Krypton are very different in many aspects but similar in others. And I believe that is a good thing. They necessarily won't make the same mistakes as we did. Not if you help them, no. Not if you be their strength. Minato said as he showed Naruto's his symbol. That's what our house symbol means. The symbol of the House of Auto means strength. Strength to help lead the people of Earth to a better tomorrow. Strength to bring out the best and good in all people. How do I know if I'm ready? Naruto asked. You are, my son. You were not raised on Krypton but on Earth. Your abilities may be of my blood but your heart and soul are human and of your experiences in Smallville. And because of that, you will protect the Earth and lead it to a brighter future. Minato said as he smiled at Naruto and then his hologram disappeared. Always hold on to Smallville. Naruto heard as he turned to see his Earth father, Jonathan Kent. Dad. Naruto said with a smile. You are ready, son. Jonathan said with a huge smile on his face as Naruto nodded. Naruto then looked at the suit and put it on and it was a good fit. It felt right. NC 967. Naruto shouted as the drone came by. Hello, Naw. How can I help you? The drone asked. I don't suppose you can quickly whip up something that changed my appearance. Naruto asked. Of course. But may I ask why? The drone asked. If I remember anything from Smallville, it's that I was nearly discovered whenever I kept saving people. If I'm going to keep doing this, I need my secret safe. Naruto said as the drone nodded and quickly got to work. The drone was able to fix up Naruto something that he could use to alter his appearance when he was in costume. Naruto walked out of the fortress and saw Clark standing in the snow and basking in the sun in his new suit. It was similar to Naruto's but colored blue and red with a cape. Naruto then walked out and stood next to him. Nice outfit. Not a fan of the cape though. Naruto said as Clark looked at him and noticed he looked different. I like it. It's my colors. But why do you look different? Clark asked. He saw that Naruto's hair was no longer blonde but jet black. It kept its spiky nature but was styled differently and a lot shorter. Naruto's eyes changed color so they were now brown and his whisker marks were gone. And because Naruto's whisker marks were gone, his face looked different. Honestly, if you didn't know Naruto, you wouldn't recognize him now. Regular Naruto is his Naruto Shippuden hair while superhero Naruto is Naruto the last movie hairstyle. I had NC967 whip up a small device to put on my collar. Naruto said as he showed Naruto the small pin with his spiral sun on it. When I put on my suit, it alters my appearance so I'm not that easy to recognize. If we're gonna be using our powers to save people on a global scale, we'll need to work extra hard to keep our identities a secret. You're right. Maybe I'll do something like that. Clark said as Naruto nodded. So, you think we're ready to introduce ourselves to the world? Ready as we'll ever be. So let's do it in a big fashion. Naruto said as Clark nodded and both flew straight into the air and into the sky. They flew through the crowds and flew fast enough to break the sound barrier. Clark and Naruto looked at each other and smiled as they then flew faster and soon passed Europe. They then flew up into the sky near the stratosphere and looked at how amazing the planet looked and then flew back to Earth and flew over Africa and crossed the Atlantic. Naruto and Clark entered US airspace and were flying back home when their super hearing picked up something. Help me. They heard and they quickly made their way to the cry for help. They flew to the cry for help which led them to a large forest fire at Yosemite National Park. They looked down and saw campers gathering all the stuff they could and tried to escape the campgrounds before the fire cut off their escape. Naruto saw a family of 3 running from the fire as fast as they could but they didn't see a falling tree right above them so Naruto swooped in and saved them from being squished. Clark saw a family stuck in a camping RV and trapped by a raging inferno so he quickly swooped down and lifted the RV out of there. Naruto and Clark then quickly got the other campers to safety as the Park Service and Fire Department began to arrive and were greeted to the sight of people being whisked to safety from the raging fire. Then people looked up to the sky and saw 2 men in colored outfits, floating in the sky. They took out their phones and began taking photos or recording what was happening. Naruto and Clark took a deep breath and used their freeze breath to put out the fire. Everyone was amazed at the sight of the floating men who put out the raging forest fire. Naruto and Clark then quickly flew away as the people talked to one another about what had just happened. They then heard more cries of help which led them stopping a bank robbery in New York City, Las Vegas, and Miami, an attempted murder in Gotham, a hostage situation in Los Angeles, a police standoff with criminals in Seattle, a construction wreck in Chicago and a gas explosion in San Diego. They were in time for the saves and were quick enough that their faces weren't clearly captured. Line break XXXXX. The next day, Naruto and Clark went to Metropolis to go talk to Chloe. Clark decided to act on what Naruto said and take steps to keep his secret identity safe. Clark decided to wear glasses, change his hair and walked with a bit of a slouch and changed his mannerism. Hopefully it would help convince people that Clark Kent was just a regular person. They walked into the Daily Planet to see everyone on the floor moving in haste. It must have been a big news day. Naruto and Clark looked at the TV screens and they saw what the big news day was. It was them. All of the news stations and social media were blowing up with photos and videos of Naruto and Clark in their outfits and saving people. Pictures from the forest fire, bank robberies and the gas explosion. The pictures are good but no clear shot of our face. So far, so good. Naruto said as Clark nodded and they saw Chloe talking to her editor, Perry White. Sullivan, headline. Mysterious Saviors. Gods are men. Perry said as Chloe wrote that down. I'm on it. Chloe said as Perry left and she saw the guys. Hey, I see you guys made your big entrance. By the way, love the suits. Thanks. So, how has our big debut been received? Clark asked as they walked over to Chloe's computer. Well, every news and social media outlet are running the amateur photos and videos of you guys. Granted they're a little blurry and not great, but they're good enough to spur talks and questions about what happened. Chloe said as they looked at the TV monitors and saw the opinions and statements about Naruto and Clark. Some believed that Naruto and Clark were people who used advanced tech for their powers. Some thought they were human experiments who were gifted superpowers, while others thought they were US military projects or robots. People questioned what they wanted. Were they good guys or bad guys? If they were good guys, who did they answer to? Did they belong to one country or answer to a political leader? And if they were saving people, why did they show up today? Not all of it is likable or good, but it's out there. Chloe said as Naruto and Clark nodded. Well, that's what we want. We want people to know we're out there and we're here to help. Clark said as Naruto looked around. Where are Lois and Jimmy? Naruto asked. Oh, they're busy at City Hall doing a story. The governor's here to do a speech on his new budget plan and Perry had Lois and Jimmy cover the press conference. Chloe said as Naruto nodded. So is Lois all right? Clark asked. Well, when I mentioned you before she didn't seem to flinch. Just give her some time. Chloe said. Yeah, soon you guys will, boom. A huge explosion could be heard from miles away and shook the building as desks and cabinets fell over. What happened? Chloe asked as Naruto and Clark saw a fire, miles away at the city limits, close to the Metropolis nuclear power plant. Someone set off an explosive device at the Metropolis nuclear plant. A reporter said as everyone scrambled to get their items. Naruto, Clark, you guys. Chloe didn't finish her sentence as she saw Clark and Naruto were gone. She walked up to the window and saw two blurs fly towards the power plant. Good luck, guys. Naruto and Clark flew at full speed to the power plant and saw part of the plant on fire and people running for safety. Naruto saw two workers running from the building as a broken beam fell from a tower and was about to squish them, so Naruto flew down and stopped it from squishing them. Clark flew down and moved some rubble that was blocking the exit so people could run. Naruto pushed the beam back into place and melted it back in with his heat vision. He then flew over to the fire and used his freeze breath to put it out. Naruto and Clark saw part of the reactor wall crumble, fall over and would crush everyone. Naruto and Clark flew over and stopped the wall from falling onto the people and lifted it up. Go! Naruto shouted as he lifted it up into the air as the workers saw them lift the giant concrete wall and put it back to the reactor while Clark used his heat vision to melt the metal support back together. Naruto used his X-ray vision and looked through the building and saw power plant workers running to safety, but main control room was a different story. Naruto saw the power plant technicians being held at gunpoint by 6 men armed with guns. Clark, there are hostages. Naruto shouted as Clark used his X-ray vision and saw the situation. Let's go. Clark shouted as they flew down and smashed through the roof of the control room, shocking the technicians and the terrorists. Naruto super sped forward and knocked one terrorist against the wall and knocked him out, and then grabbed the gun of the second one and pushed him away. Clark did the same to 2 other terrorists while the remaining 2 opened fire on Clark and Naruto, but the bullets just bounced off their skin and suits and ricocheted around the room. Naruto then super sped forward and slammed them against the wall and knocked them out. He then piled them together, grabbed a metal railing and tied them up while Clark used his heat vision to cut the binds off of the technicians. Are you all right? Clark asked as the technicians nodded. It was all they could do after they were in shock over what just happened. Is there anyone else here? Naruto asked. No, but we've got a big problem. The terrorists planted an explosive near the reactor and it's compromised. The reactor is going to go critical. The technician said as he looked over the panels and saw the heat and power level going extremely high. Is that bad? Naruto asked. If we can't stop it, then we'll have an American Chernobyl. The technician said as he tried to activate the coolant system and turn off the reactor, but it wasn't working. The terrorists destroyed the controls. Can you stop it? Clark asked. I can't stop it from here. The controls are shot. We need to cool the reactor down and cap the radiation chamber to keep the radiation contained. The technician said as he pointed to the cameras and showed them what to do where. Let's cap the chamber first. Naruto said as Clark nodded and they flew away as the technician monitored the power levels of the reactor. Naruto and Clark flew down the radiation chamber and saw the massive hole caused by the explosion. Naruto and Clark quickly picked up the damaged lead wall and placed it back into place and used their heat vision to melt it back in where they could, but there were still gaps and holes. They then tore off other metal panels to cover up the holes and melted them in place and managed to fix the radiation chamber. Nice, but now we need to cool down the reactor. It'll go critical in 1 minute. The technician said over the intercom. Naruto and Clark flew to the reactor and saw it overheating, so they quickly used their freeze breath to cool it down. When their freeze breath hit the hot reactor, it created steam which filled up the room, but the reactor was slowly cooling down. The technician looked at the monitor and saw the reactor temperature slowly cooling down. Come on. The technician said as the core soon reached regular levels, and then the technician began to power down the reactor. Naruto and Clark saw the reactor turn off and stopped. We did it. The reactor is off. The technician said as Naruto and Clark smiled. Naruto flew the technician out of the plant and into the parking lot where they saw the police, fire department and media arrive on scene. Naruto put the technician down and smiled as Naruto smiled back and floated up to Clark. Naruto and Clark floated in the sky as the media and bystanders took photos and videos. Naruto and Clark smiled and were about to fly off when they heard something big break in the city. They immediately flew back to the city and to City Hall where they heard the noise. They saw a giant crane fall from the roof of a building near City Hall and was about to fall onto the crowd of news reporters, bystanders and the governor's detail. The crane smashed part of the building and was just about to fall onto the crowd. Lois and Jimmy tried to run away, but Lois tripped. Jimmy ran to help her but saw the crane about to fall on them and braced themselves, but it never came. They opened their eyes and looked up to see the crane had stopped in midair. They saw that it was stopped by two men who were holding it up. They looked and saw the two men stand up and lift the crane and got a better look at them. They saw their suits, the symbols on the suits and the men wearing them, and Lois and Jimmy recognized them instantly. Smallville. Lois asked as she saw Clark and Naruto lift up the crane. Clark smiled at Lois and winked at her while Naruto nodded. Clark and Naruto then flew up and lifted the crane above the crowd. Jimmy grabbed his camera and quickly began taking photos of Naruto and Clark lifting the crane up and put it back on the building. The crowd then cheered and clapped at their mysterious saviors as Jimmy took more photos and Lois was speechless. Naruto and Clark smiled at each other and then flew away. Jimmy then looked at Lois. Did you know they could do that? Jimmy asked as Lois fainted. Lois. Line break XXXXX. After their Metropolis debut, Naruto and Clark returned home to Smallville to finish some farm work. Martha went to the grocery store while Clark was fixing the irrigation ditch and Naruto was in the kitchen working on his laptop. His boss sent over some manuscripts that he wanted Naruto to look over and help edit. New manuscripts that were sent to the company were edited and looked over by several members of the publishing company before the editor gave it the thumbs up or down. Naruto was busy working, fixing some lines on page 45. He took a sip of coffee when he heard a car pull up to the house. Naruto. Clark shouted as Naruto walked out and saw Clark standing outside the house, but he wasn't alone. With him was Lois, Jimmy and Chloe, who just arrived in a car. Oh. Naruto said. Yeah, oh. Come on, let's talk. Lois said as she and Jimmy walked into the house. Chloe walked up to them and looked at them. Sorry, guys. I tried to give you a heads up, but Lois snatched my phone. Chloe said as Naruto and Clark nodded. They then walked in and saw Jimmy looking at them while Lois looked irritated and annoyed. Clark grabbed a rag and wiped his hands clean of dirt while Naruto closed his laptop and Chloe stood by them. No one spoke for about a minute, which made for some awkward silence when Naruto broke it. So, I'm guessing you both have a lot of questions. Naruto said. That would be an understatement. Jimmy said. Yeah, well, you find out the two people you thought you knew as simple farm boys but are instead two super strong meteor-infected men in tights. Lois said as she glared at Clark. To be fair, they're not tights. Naruto said as Lois glared at him. Not important. This would explain all of the weird things over the past years. The random appearances, the saves and the crappy excuses. All this time I've just cracked it up to a case of Peter Pan syndrome, but you guys are the opposite. We want answers. Lois said as Naruto and Clark looked at each other. If you guys don't mind. Jimmy said as Lois slapped him on the chest. Well, there is no hiding it from you two anymore since you recognized us. Naruto said as he cleared his throat. You're right. We've been using our powers to help people, long before we met you two. But we're not meteor infected. Okay, then what? Were you guys human experiments? In a freak accident? Jimmy asked. No, we are not from around here. We're not human. Clark said as Lois and Jimmy looked at him. What do you mean? Lois asked as she realized. You guys are aliens. Yeah. Naruto replied. Alien is in from another planet. Jimmy asked. Yeah. Naruto replied. Wow. Lois said as digested that piece of information. Our planet died years ago and our birth parents sent us to Earth. We were found by our parents and we've been on Earth ever since. Naruto said. So, you guys have always been able to fly and stuff? Jimmy asked. Not always. Naruto said. Okay, so what can you guys do? Lois asked. I guess you guys should know. We can shoot fire out of our eyes, blow ice-cold breaths of air, we can hear a whisper from miles away, see through solid objects and fly faster than the speed of sound. Clark said. Wait, go back. Can you explain the see-through solid objects part? Lois said as she raised her arms up. No, Lois. We have to concentrate. And even if we did, I never peeped on you. Clark said as Naruto chuckled. So you guys have had these powers all this time. How did I never notice? I mean, was I high the entire time? Lois asked as Naruto, Clark and Chloe chuckled. Well, the important thing is you guys know now. Only a few people know who we really are. Chloe is one of them. We need you two to keep this a secret. Naruto said. Why? I mean, come on guys. If yesterday was any indicator, you want people to know who you are. Jimmy said as he showed them today's copy of the Daily Planet. It showed a picture of the two of them in costume, floating in the air after stopping the falling crane. The headline read Men of Steel Save Metropolis and was written by Lois. Oh, nice headline. Chloe said. Yeah, and it sold out every single copy in the newsstands. I mean, you guys are global news. Lois said. Yes, our hero identities are. We want people to know that we're here to help. But we also want to make sure that the world doesn't know that Clark and Naruto Kent are these heroes. Clark said. Because if people knew that Clark and Naruto were these heroes, then everyone who knew you guys would be targeted. Jimmy said as Clark and Naruto nodded. We've done a good job so far, but if we're gonna keep doing this, we need to be more careful. We know this is a lot for you guys to take in, but we need you two to keep this a secret. Naruto said as Jimmy and Lois nodded. Of course. It's the least we can do after what you guys did. Jimmy said. This is just so amazing. It's not every day you learn that the guy you've been dating is like a god. Lois said as Clark chuckled. Lois, I'm not a god. I'm just unique. Clark said. And keeping this secret won't be easy. I've had a few years of practice to get it down. I'll help you guys along the way. Chloe said as the front door opened and Martha walked inside in a hurry. Lois, Jimmy. Martha said. It's okay, Mom. They know. Clark said as Martha nodded. Hey, Mrs. Kent. Lois said. Hi. It's nice you two know now, but I think we've got a problem. I was at the store and I saw something on the news. Turn the TV on. Martha said as Naruto grabbed the remote and turned on the TV to the news station. Oh my god. Chloe said as they looked at the news and saw the problem that Martha was referring to. The news was showing amateur video of a UFO sighting in the sky. It was a spaceship that was hovering in the skies above Earth. I don't suppose this is a false alarm and you guys left your spaceship in the sky by accident? Lois asked. This isn't us. Naruto said. Then all of a sudden, all the lights and power in the house shut off. That can't be good. Jimmy said as the TV then turned back on and began making funny sounds and began showing distorted video signals, like it would show when there isn't a clear signal. Then a voice and words began to appear. You are not alone. The words and voice said and kept repeating. Chloe took out her phone and saw the same thing and message appear. It's coming in over the RSS feeds. It even took over my phone. Chloe said as the message kept repeating until the sound distorted and now showed a distorted image of some person. My name is General Zod. I come from a world far from yours. I have journeyed across an ocean of stars to reach you. I come to you with glad tidings, for the earth is doomed and I am here to save it. You are a primitive and destructive race, and if left to your own path, you will destroy your world. I come to you as a savior and will bring this planet to the glory of mine. All that I ask is your undying loyalty. Any opposition will be met with death. To the leaders of the planet Earth, I give you a small sample of the devastation I will show to whoever opposes me. Zod said as they heard a loud boom. They ran outside to see a huge beam of light in the distance that shot straight into the sky. Oh my god. Lois said as they saw the devastation from whatever Zod just did. This is just a small sample of the devastation that awaits you should you oppose me. Surrender within 24 hours, or your planet will be destroyed. Zod said as the feed cut off and the power turned back on. That is not good. Jimmy said. Is he a friend of yours? Lois asked. He's not a friend but someone very dangerous. Clark said as Naruto nodded. We'll be right back. We need to go get some answers. Can you guys dig up everything you can on where that ship is and what the military is going to do? They have no idea what they're dealing with. Naruto said as they nodded. We'll do everything we can. Good luck. Chloe said as Naruto and Clark super sped out of the house and flew straight to the fortress to get some answers. They arrived at the fortress and entered the main area as the hologram of Jor-El appeared. Hello, Kal-El. Nal Auto. Do you need assistance? Jor-El asked. Zod has arrived on Earth. Clark said as Jor-El was confused. That is impossible. He and his followers were placed on a prison ship and locked in the Phantom Zone. Jor-El sighed. Well, he's out. It's possible he managed to escape and he made his way to Earth. Naruto said. We came here because we need to know how to stop him. Clark said as Jor-El took a deep breath. You knew him, right? Naruto asked. The Zod I knew died when Krypton was destroyed. The man he is now is someone who is not to be trifled with. Zod has years of military training on Krypton and 14 followers who were sent with him to the Phantom Zone. He is a man who is not to be trifled with. What does he want? Jor-El asked. He said he has come to conquer Earth. To help lead the people of Earth into a better tomorrow. Naruto said as Jor-El thought for a second. What is it? Clark asked. Did he leave his ship? Jor-El asked. We don't think so. He took over the TV feeds to spread his message and shot a beam of energy from his ship. We don't know if he left his ship. Clark said. Zod and his followers are unaware of the change that will happen should they be exposed to Earth's yellow sun. They will gain an increased strength and speed due to Earth's lighter gravity, but only myself, Zor-El and Minato knew of the effects Earth's yellow sun would grant Kryptonians. That will give you an advantage. Jor-El sighed as he then walked over to the fortress computer and pressed some buttons. Two small ice pedestals then rose out from the ground and on those pedestals were two small crystals, each designed with Naruto and Clark's house symbol. These will help as well. Naruto and Clark took the crystals and looked at them. What are they? Clark asked. Special crystals that act as portals to the Phantom Zone, the prison where Zod and his followers were sentenced. Zod is relentless and his followers will do whatever he commands. If I am right, he will try to kill you both to conquer Earth. Jor-El sighed. We won't kill him. Clark said as Naruto nodded. Then the only other way to stop him without killing him is to send him back to the Phantom Zone. Touch the crystal to Zod and it will send him back. Jor-El sighed. But what about his ship? Naruto asked. I will prepare a larger device that will send it back to the zone and disable it to prevent another escape. Jor-El sighed as Clark and Naruto nodded and turned to leave. But be careful. Zod is a master of strategy. If he sees you, he will have contingencies for your presence. We will. Clark said. Go, my son. And be careful. Jor-El sighed as Clark and Naruto flew away. Line break XXXXX. Naruto and Clark flew straight back to Metropolis to talk to Chloe and Lois and see how the world was reacting to Zod's message and what the US Army was reacting. They entered the floor of the Daily Planet and saw it was a madhouse. Reporters and photojournalists were running all around the floor to work on stories on the recent broadcast that took over every single TV and RSI feed on the planet and on the floating spaceship that was hovering in a low-atmosphere orbit. Naruto and Clark walked through the sea of reporters and saw Chloe just get off the phone. Guys, thank God you showed up. Chloe said. How bad is it? Naruto asked. Well, the governments of the world are on full alert and preparing everything they can just in case. Chloe said as they walked over to Lois who was with Jimmy. Lois, what did your dad say? Clark asked. Officially, the general denied comment. But off the record, he says that the president has given the order to prep the silos around the entire country. After that display of power Zod showed, the army isn't taking any chances. Lois said. Same thing with the other governments around the world. Not to mention the fear and paranoia that have people going crazy. The police are doing what they can but it'll only get worse. Jimmy said. So, did you guys get the information you wanted? Think you can reason with this guy? Lois asked. Highly unlikely but we'll try. If that fails, we'll send them back to where they came from, and this time they'll stay. Clark said as they nodded when Chloe got an alert on her computer and she raced over. Oh no. Chloe said as they walked over. What is it, Chloe? Naruto asked. I sent up an algorithm to detect any hidden military chatter and it just picked up something. Apparently, the US military is going to try and launch a preemptive strike earlier than we thought. Chloe said. When? Jimmy asked. In an hour. The start of the attack is being orchestrated at the Mackenzie airfield about 70 miles from Smallville. Chloe said. They don't stand a chance against Zod. They'll be slaughtered. Clark said. Let's go. Naruto said as Clark and Naruto turned to leave. Guys. Chloe shouted as they turned. Be careful. Chloe said as she ran up and hugged them and they hugged back. Thanks, Chloe. Naruto said as he hugged her and Lois walked up to Clark. Be careful, Smallville. Lois said as she hugged Clark and he hugged back. Naruto, you think you and Clark can stop him? Chloe asked. Maybe. But if you don't hear back from us in an hour, head to the caves in Smallville and use the key to head to the fortress. There should be something there can stop Zod's ship. Naruto said as Chloe nodded. You better come back. Chloe said as she began to tear up and Naruto smiled. Let's go, Clark. Time to save the world. Naruto said as they entered the elevator and Naruto took off his button-up and shirt to reveal he was wearing his suit underneath and Clark did the same thing. They then quickly flew up the elevator shaft and out of the building and straight to the Mackenzie airfield base to stop the military from attacking. Naruto and Clark quickly flew towards the Air Force base and when they arrived, they hovered outside the main gate to the compound. The soldiers at the security checkpoint looked up and saw two men in suits floating in the air. They quickly pulled out their guns, ran up and pointed them at Naruto and Clark. Freeze! They shouted as Naruto and Clark stayed in the air. We would like to speak to the general in charge. Naruto said. The soldiers looked at them. One of the soldiers then looked at the other. Go get General Swanwick. One of them said as one soldier left and ran to the base. After a few minutes, more men on the base armed up and pointed their guns at the two hovering men outside their base. They loaded heavy machine guns, armed cannons, jeeps and tanks and pointed them all at the two men and waited for the order to fire or for the two men to make the first move. Then a black sedan drove up to the checkpoint and 4 people got out. Naruto and Clark used their supervision to see their name tags. Lieutenant General Swanwick, Colonel Nathan Hardy, Dr. Emil Hamilton and Captain Carol Ferris. All right, you've got our attention. What is it you want? General Swanwick asked. Just to talk, General. That's all. Naruto said. You two come to a restricted United States military base and demand my presence to just talk. Talk about what? General Swanwick asked. The spaceship orbiting above Earth. Clark said as the general and colonel shared a look. We'll talk. What do you have to say? General Swanwick asked as Naruto and Clark lowered down and touched the ground as the men kept their guns trained on the two men. We came to stop you from launching attacks against the spaceship. You don't know what you're up against. Clark said as the general stepped forward. And you do. 2 boys with special powers who managed to save a few civilians in Metropolis. What exactly is your relationship with the alien threat? General Swanwick asked. We come from the same planet. But we're nicer. Naruto replied as he saw Dr. Hamilton cover his mouth. Relax, Dr. Hamilton. You can't blame me for being cautious. You two might be carrying some kind of alien pathogen. Dr. Hamilton said. Been here for nearly 30 years, Doctor. Haven't infected anyone yet. Clark said. That you know of. The United States government have legitimate security concerns about the spacecraft and now you. Who exactly are you two? General Swanwick asked. People who want to help. General Zod is someone who isn't to be trifled with and your weapons won't do anything. We'll handle him. Naruto said. How? Swanwick asked. That's for us to know. If you are at all concerned with the safety and security of your men, you'll let us handle this. Naruto said as he and Clark turned to leave. And what should happen if you fail? Swanwick asked. Then there won't be anyone else who can stop him. Naruto said as Clark and Naruto flew into the air and away. They flew into the air and towards Zod's ship that was in low orbit around the planet. They slowed down as they saw the large ship in front of them. So should we knock? Clark asked as Naruto shrugged his shoulders. Then they saw the ship hum, like the engine had turned on and saw a large cargo door open up near the side of the ship. I think that's for us. Naruto said. Let's be careful. Clark said as he and Naruto flew down and entered the cargo hold and saw about 4 smaller-sized alien ships lined up. This place must have been the hangar. They landed on the ground and the hangar door closed behind them. Once it did, 4 people dressed in strange armor and armed with strange-looking guns entered the hangar. Kal-El. Nal Auto. General Zod sends his greeting to you. We are to escort you to him. One of them said as Naruto and Clark looked at each other. Of course. Clark said as Naruto and Clark followed each the four men and were escorted through the ship and into what seemed like the main control and observation room of the ship. In the room, were the rest of Zod's followers and Zod himself. General Zod from Man of Steel. General Zod. One of them said as Zod turned to see Naruto and Clark. Kal-El, Nal Auto. Welcome. We've been expecting you. Zod said as Naruto and Clark walked up to him. I take it you're Zod. Naruto said. General Zod, our commander. Fora his second-in-command said. It's all right, Fora. These two are unfamiliar with our ways. We can forgive them any lack in decorum. Zod said as he walked up to Naruto and Clark and looked at their faces. You two are the spitting images of your fathers. And I see you've taken to wearing your house symbols. Good. As the last survivors of Krypton, it is important that we remember our home. Then where does threatening the people of Earth fall into that plan? Naruto asked as Zod chuckled. It was merely a show. Nothing but the bright lights of the ship focused to look threatening. To draw you two to me. Zod said as Naruto and Clark looked at each other. When my ship neared Earth, our scanners managed to pick up the Kryptonian energy signal from the Fortress of Knowledge located in the northern part of the planet. It was the same signal of the crystals of knowledge that Jor-El invented years ago. I knew he would only give them to his son. So you did all this to draw us out. Why? Clark asked. To complete my mission. To protect what remains of Krypton. Our race will live again. Zod said as he walked around the ship and Naruto reached his hand down to his belt where his crystal was located. Back on Krypton, I was its military leader, your father's the foremost scientists, and the only thing we all agreed on was that Krypton was dying. In return for my efforts to protect our civilization and save our planet, I and my fellow officers were sentenced to the Phantom Zone. Zod said as Naruto and Clark glanced at each other and reached down to their crystals. We were adrift, destined to float amongst the zone for what seemed like an eternity. Eventually, we managed to retrofit the Phantom projector into a hyperdrive. Your fathers made similar modifications to the ship that brought you to Earth. And so the instrument of our damnation became our salvation. Zod said. We then spent years scouring the galaxy, visiting the old Kryptonian outposts, in hopes of finding other survivors. But alas, cut off from Krypton, these outposts withered and died long ago. We salvaged what we could, armor, weapons, technology, even a world engine. Until we made our way to the Milky Way galaxy and to planet Earth. Zod said as he nodded to his men. Clark and Naruto were then restrained as four of Zod's men grabbed Naruto and Clark and restrained their arms so they couldn't move and reach for their Phantom Zone crystal. What are you doing? Naruto shouted as he and Clark tried to move. Doing what I must to ensure Krypton survives. We are the remnants of a once great civilization, and it is our duty to ensure our race's survival. And this planet is perfect. On planet Earth, Krypton will begin again. Zod said. Then why did you draw us here? Clark asked. Because I wish for you two to join me. Join me, and with Jor-El's Kryptonian's technology, we can make this planet our utopia. Zod said as Naruto struggled to get free. And what the people of Earth? Naruto asked. The foundation has to be built on something. Here, it will be built on the bones of the humans who oppose me. Zod said as Clark and Naruto tried to get free but for some reason, felt that their super strength was gone. They tried using their speed, heat vision, but they weren't working. We'll never join you. Clark said as Zod frowned and turned his back to them. Well then I hope that's a decision you can live with, forever. I have a duty to my people. And I will not let anyone prevent me from carrying that out. Zod said as his men quickly backed away from Naruto and Clark. Zod then turned around and tossed a small Kryptonian ring device into the air which then flew behind Naruto and Clark. Naruto and Clark recognized it as the same device that Namek and Athri attempted to use on Clark and Naruto. Naruto and Clark tried to run away but were soon sucked into the ring and transported to the Phantom Zone. No. Clark and Naruto shouted as they were whisked away from planet Earth, leaving it completely at the mercy of Zod and his followers. Line break XXXXX. Naruto and Clark were captured in their weird crystal, prism cells that transported them away from planet Earth. They felt helpless, as it was now left at the mercy of Zod and his followers and there wasn't anything they could do. Naruto punched his prison but couldn't get free, when all of a sudden, he and Clark were sucked through and transported someplace else. They fell through the air and hit a massive hill of dirt and sand and tumbled down the side. They rolled, flipped and smashed onto the ground until they hit level ground and groaned in pain. Naruto lifted his face from the dirt and spit some out of his mouth, along with splat of blood. Naruto groaned as he got on his knees and saw Clark lean up and touch his mouth which was bleeding. Wind blew all around them and kicked up dirt which got in their eyes. Naruto and Clark stood up and saw they were in a barren wasteland. There was no yellow sun, just gray light, and there didn't seem like there was anything but desert for miles. Clark, are you all right? Naruto asked as Clark nodded and Naruto pat him on the back. We've got to get out of here. Clark said as Naruto nodded. Come on. Naruto said as he began to walk up the massive dirt hill they fell down. Where are you going? Clark asked. Anywhere but here. We've got to find a way back to Earth. Naruto said as Clark nodded and followed him. They walked up the hill and when they came to the top, they saw more desert and hills for miles. They kept walking, hoping to see something that could help them get out of the Phantom Zone and back to Earth to stop Zod. Naruto and Clark kept waking but then stopped when they heard something. Growls they heard as they turned around to see what made that noise but didn't see a thing. What was that? Naruto asked as they kept hearing the noise all around them but couldn't see them. Naruto and Clark stood back to back as the noises kept getting louder and closer. Naruto and Clark kept looking around for a sign of whatever was coming was closing in. All of a sudden, something blindsided Naruto and tackled him to the ground while another thing zoomed by and slashed Clark in the leg and then another hit him in the face. Naruto tried to push the thing off of him but couldn't as it slashed at his face and chest while Clark was being dogpiled. The thing then wrapped whatever it had for hands around Naruto's neck and began choking him. Clark, Naruto managed to say as he felt his airways constricting. More things then came and began clawing at Naruto when Naruto felt one of his pockets on his belt vibrate and quickly reached for it. He grabbed whatever it was and it was his Phantom Zone crystal. Once he grabbed it, it glowed brightly and scared whatever the things were off of him. Naruto then leaned up and saw another figure walking down a sandhill holding something and pointing it at Clark. The object the figure held emitted the same kind of light that Naruto's crystal did and scared the things off of Clark. Clark and Naruto breathed a sigh of relief as they saw their savior. Thank you. Clark said as the figure removed her mask to reveal a woman. Welcome to the Phantom Zone. She said as she looked at their symbols. Come with me. She began to walk away as Naruto and Clark looked at her. Now, she said as she ushered them to follow her. Do we trust her? Clark asked. Do we have a choice? Naruto asked as they followed her. They followed her for about an hour through the desert until they came to a small modest shelter near some cliffs. She took off her poncho and desert clothing for her more comfortable clothes below and handed them wet cloths. For your wounds, she said as Naruto and Clark took them and wiped up their blood. Who are you? Clark asked. My name is Raya. Not that names matter here. Raya said as she helped clean some of Clark's wounds. Here being the Phantom Zone. Naruto said as Raya nodded. Jor-El and Zor-El created this place in space to inhabit the most dangerous criminals from the 28 known inhabited galaxies. Raya said. If this is a prison, does that make you a prisoner? Clark asked as Raya dug into one of his wounds and Clark groaned. I may be trapped here but that does not make me one of the prisoners. Raya said as she washed the cloth. Are we supposed to just trust you? Because we don't even know you. Clark said. Good. Trust gets you killed quickly in the zone. Raya said as she then helped clean up Naruto's wounds. But I am a loyal servant of the House of El and its friends. Given the two symbols you two are wearing, I take it you two are Kal-El and Nal-Auto. The sons of Jor-El and Min-Auto, Krypton's greatest scientists. You knew our parents? Clark asked. I was one of their assistants. Raya said. When you were 5, you can't be much older than us. Naruto said. Time is meaningless here. I haven't aged a day since I was sent here. Raya said. Why are you here? Naruto asked. I wanted to stay with them during Krypton's final hours, but they wouldn't have it. Jor-El thought I would have a better chance in the zone. Raya said. Why didn't our parents come with you? Clark asked. Because they wouldn't stop trying to save Krypton. I guess it was meaningless in the end. Raya said as she held her crystal. It has kept me alive. What do you mean? Clark asked. Some of the most vicious offenders in the zone are dangerous. Their corporeal bodies leaving their essence to haunt the wasteland. Or they are placed in vessels and sent to float above, like Fort Ross. Raya said. The phantoms that attacked us. Naruto said as Raya nodded. Only special Phantom Zone crystals created by Jor-El himself can repel them. Raya said as she touched her crystal around her necklace. Like ours. Naruto said as he took his out and showed Raya. Exactly. That crystal acts like a shield against the phantoms but can also be used as portals to the zone itself. More than likely the reason you are both here. Raya said. That's not the reason. Naruto said. Then what? Raya asked. General Zod. Clark said as Raya looked at him shocked. He escaped from the Phantom Zone along with his followers and made his way to Earth. We met him and he captured us. Why did you meet with Zod? He isn't someone to be trifled with. Raya said. We know that now. We were about to send him to the zone but we got captured. Our powers weren't working. Naruto said. Zod's ship. It mimics the atmosphere and radiation of Krypton. On Earth, you may have your powers, but on Zod's ship, you were essentially human. Jor-El should have taken Zod's body and banished him to the zone, but there was no time. Raya said. Raya, you helped my father build this place. Is there a way out? Clark asked. You cannot go back. Zod and his followers are soldiers with years of training and experience. They will kill you. Raya said. We have to. We can't let Zod take over Earth. They don't stand a chance against him. Naruto said. If there was a chance to save everyone you loved from dying, wouldn't you try? Clark asked as Raya thought for a second. You truly are your father's son. Raya said as she grabbed 2 extra cloaks for Naruto and Clark. There is a gateway not far from here that can be used as a portal to leave the zone. It can return you two to Earth. Raya put on her cloak as Naruto and Clark followed her and they left her shelter and made their way through the desert. If there's a portal here, how come you didn't use it? Naruto asked. It wouldn't work. The portal would only work with a member of the House of El or Otto. Jor-El and Minato created it in case anyone tried to imprison any of their loved ones in the zone. As a backdoor out of this place. Raya said. Why would he be worried about that? Clark asked. They were great men. And like any great men, they had their enemies. Raya said as they made their trek through the desert. They kept walking for another hour through the desert as the wind picked up. How much farther? Naruto asked. Not much. Or close. Raya said. Ah. Naruto and Clark looked to see Raya shout in pain and down on the ground because something sharp was thrown into her shoulder. Raya. Naruto shouted as Naruto looked around and got hit by another object in the shoulder. Ah. Naruto shouted as he saw 2 cloaked figures run up to them. One got the jump on Clark and used a rope to choke him from behind while the other one pulled out a knife. Naruto pulled out the metal spike from his shoulder and swung his fist at the cloaked figure but the figure blocked his punch. The figure then sliced Naruto in the arm, then again across the face. The figure then punched him in the gut and kicked him across the face and sent him to the ground. Raya got up but the figure spin kicked Raya across the face and knocked her to the ground. The figure that had Clark then kicked out his legs and forced him to his knees. The figure then took off Clark's hood and looked at him. Naruto and Clark looked at the figure and saw him remove his face mask to reveal he was Namek, one of Zod's followers that Naruto and Clark sent to the Phantom Zone back during when their small ship came to Earth during the second meteor shower. If Namek was here, the one choking Clark was probably Ethier. Kal-El, Nal Otto. Namek said with a smile as he pulled out another knife. Namek, wait. Don't kill them. Raya said. Why should I spare his life? The ones who sent me here. Namek said. They can open the gateway. I was bringing them to you. They can free us all. Raya said. Well, then. Namek said as he kicked Naruto in the stomach and then yanked him to his feet. You'll live a while longer. Move. Ethier said as she pushed Clark and Raya forward while Namek pushed Naruto. They walked about 20 minutes until they came to a group of pillars and a podium, the portal out of the Phantom Zone. Hurry, others will be here soon. Ethier said as she then punched Clark across the face and to the ground while Namek kicked Naruto in the gut. Open the gateway. Namek shouted as he pulled out his knife. They don't know how. But I do. Give me the knife. Raya said as Namek handed her the knife. Ethier grabbed Clark while Raya made a cut on his palm to draw blood. It is his blood. The blood of the House of El that is the key to opening the gateway. We trusted you. Clark said in anger as Naruto looked at her and she winked at him. Trust is for the weak. Namek said. You're right. Raya said as she then spun around and slashed Namek across the neck. He gasps as he grabbed his neck to stop the blood flowing out. Namek. Ethier shouted as Naruto elbowed her in the face and knocked her away. Raya then helped Naruto and Clark to their feet. The gateway. Go. Raya shouted as they saw phantoms and other prisoners closing in. Naruto and Clark ran to the podium while Raya and Ether were engaged in a knife fight. Ray and Ether fought one another while Naruto and Clark ran up to the podium as they saw phantoms and zoners closing in. They saw the podium had the sigils of their houses on it, so Clark placed his palm on the symbol and the entire podium glowed brightly. They turned around to see Ether stab Raya in the side and her scream in pain. Ah! Raya shouted. Raya! Clark shouted as the beam of light consumed Naruto, Clark, and several phantoms and then shot straight into the sky. Naruto and Clark felt their bodies rushing through the air, faster than they ever had, and soon saw themselves approaching Earth. They smashed into the ground and felt their powers return. Naruto and Clark stood up and walked out of the crater they just made to see they were in the surrounding forests outside of Smallville. We're back. Naruto said with a smile when his hearing picked up something. It is time to end this world, and begin a new one. Naruto heard Zod, so he and Clark immediately flew towards the voices. Line break XXXXX while Clark and Naruto are in the Phantom Zone. About several hours on Earth. Back on Zod's ship, Zod smirked as he just saw Kal-El and Null Auto sent to the Phantom Zone. The only two people who could possibly stop him were gone. He then went to an observation window to look down at Earth. What now, General? Fora asked. Assemble a squad and take a ship down to the Earth's military bases. Gather the information I require from this Earth's Pentagon and assemble at the ancient Kryptonian control center in the caves. From there, the rebirth of Krypton will start. Zod said as his men nodded, and he and his men soon boarded the ship and went to the Pentagon. Back on Earth, Chloe, Lois and Jimmy were at the Daily Planet as they were watching the global news coverage on the alien threat that was hovering above their planet. Armed military bases all over the world were preparing their armies, and there was even a rumor that they were prepping the nuclear silos to kill the aliens. Their co-workers were all anxious about the incoming threat, and Perry still had reporters there, but he allowed some to head home if they wanted to be with their families. Jimmy was cleaning his camera for the 12th time in a row while Chloe was looking at the clock and Lois was fidgeting. Chloe looked at the clock again and knew that if Naruto or Clark hadn't at least sent her a text or something, something had gone wrong. That's it. Chloe said as she got up and grabbed her jacket. Where are you going? Jimmy asked. To help Naruto and Clark. Come on. Chloe said as she left, and Lois and Jimmy looked at one another. Chloe, wait for us. Lois said as she and Jimmy grabbed their stuff and left with Chloe. There was traffic getting out of the city as people were evacuating and the mass panic on the streets, but they managed to make it out and were in Smallville. After a quick stop at the Kent barn to get the cave key and kryptonite for emergencies, Chloe led Jimmy and Naruto through the old Native American caves in Smallville. Why are we here, Chloe? Jimmy asked. These caves in Smallville are one of the oldest landmarks in the entire world, and for a reason. See some of the symbols on the wall? Chloe asked as they looked. Yeah, Lois replied. It turns out that thousands of years ago, people from Krypton made their way to Earth and helped build them. Chloe said. So that's why Clark and Naruto were always obsessed with them. Lois said. Yup, these caves were their first experience of their own world and also happened to house a secret chamber that will lead us to their second. Chloe said as they walked into the key chamber room. Just remember to keep bundled up, it'll get cold where we're going. And where exactly are we going? Jimmy asked as Chloe put the key in the slot and the table glowed brightly before transporting them around the world into a chamber in the Fortress of Solitude. Welcome to the Fortress of Solitude. At least, that's what Naruto called it when it was first made. This is the last remnants of their home, and Naruto said that there was something here that could help stop Zod. Chloe said as they walked around. Jimmy and Lois were awestruck at what they were seeing. Wow. Lois said as she looked around the fortress and couldn't believe what she was seeing. This is incredible. Jimmy said as he took some pictures. James. Chloe shouted. Oh, right. Sorry. Jimmy said as he turned his camera off. So what are we doing here? Naruto said that if he and Clark weren't back in an hour, there was something here that could help. Chloe said as they walked into the main area. Except I have no idea what we're supposed to be looking for. They looked around when all of a sudden a small floating robot appeared before them. Greeting, I am Cal 9765 Personal Assistance Drone. Please identify yourself. The robot said. Chloe Sullivan, Lois Lane and James Olsen. Or friends of Kal-El and Null Auto or Clark and Naruto. Chloe said as the robot did a quick search. Yes, Kal-El spoke of his friends. Greetings, Ms. Sullivan. What brings you to the fortress and how may I be of assistance? The robot asked. Naruto told us that there was something here that could help stop Zod. Chloe said as the robot nodded and then left. Where is it going? Lois asked. Greetings. They heard as they turned around and saw the holographic image of two men looked just like Naruto and Clark but much older. Hi. Chloe, who are they? Jimmy asked. I'm not sure. Chloe said. We are Kal-El and Nal-Otto's fathers. Jor-El Saeed. Oh. Well, it's nice to finally put a face to the disembodied voice Clark and Naruto would hear. Chloe said. My son sent you here. Minato asked. Yes. He said that if he didn't hear from us soon after he went to confront Zod to come here. He said there was something that could help stop Zod and his ship. Chloe said. Yes. 1 second. Jor-El Saeed as he walked over to the Kryptonian computer and implemented a few commands. When he did that, 4 robot helpers appeared, carrying a spaceship. Is that a spaceship? James asked. Yes, it is. Jor-El Saeed as Chloe recognized it. Wait, that's the ship that landed in Smallville after the second meteor shower. Chloe said. Yes, carrying 2 of Zod's followers. Kal-El brought it here to hide it. We have been modifying the hyperdrive on the ship to turn it into a phantom drive. Minato said. What is a phantom drive? James asked. A phantom drive allows a ship to bend space and travel great distances. But this modification will open a hole in space and send it straight to the phantom zone. We are modifying it to work in conjunction with the hyperdrive on Zod's ship. When the 2 drives collide with one another, it will open a portal that will send Zod's ship straight back to the phantom zone. Jor-El Saeed. Great. Lois said. We shall complete the modifications and help you onto the transport platform. Jor-El Saeed as the robots worked on the ship. Line break XXXXX. Zod and his ship landed in the valley where the caves were located after their trip to the Pentagon. Zod and his men left the ship and entered the caves to the Kryptonian pedestal that Clark and Naruto used to transport to the fortress. Zod then put a briefcase, covered in blood on the table. Did you bring what I asked for? Zod asked. Yes, sir. One of his soldiers said as he pulled out a small orb known as an Omegahedron, a Kryptonian power source and miniature computer that was 100 times more powerful than a nuclear reactor. Zod acquired one by removing it from the prison ship's power system. Zod then opened the case, which was a computer with government access code from the Pentagon. He then placed the Omegahedron on the computer, which then inserted its own Kryptonian coding system and began taking over every single U.S. military computer system, military base, nuclear missile and satellite. The computer then began the auto-destruct system of the military satellites and started the countdown to blow up the nuclear missiles and launch others all over the world, killing all the humans. It is time to end this world and begin a new one. Zod said when all of a sudden, the top of the caves was bashed in when a red and blue blur smashed through and tackled Zod out of the caves, through the ground and towards Smallville. Zod's followers quickly went back to their ships when they saw Naruto land down in the cave. Naruto saw the computer and the strange orb on it and saw the countdown on the screen, so he quickly used his heat vision to fry the computer, which short-circuited it and cut off the Omegahedron's connection to the military secure network. The computer then exploded as one of Zod's soldiers charged at Naruto, but Naruto ducked his punch and landed an uppercut that knocked him straight out of the cave. Naruto then flew out of the cave and went to go check on Clark. He saw Clark in Smallville, having just tackled Zod straight through a gas station, which caused a huge explosion and sent civilians away. He saw Zod on the ground in pain and being carried away while Clark was against a car. Naruto quickly flew down and helped his brother. Clark, you all right? Naruto asked as he helped Clark, but Zod and some of his followers quickly left in one of their ships. I'm fine. Clark said as they watched the ship fly fast that it soon disappeared. They then turned around and looked down the street to see 2 of Zod's followers walking towards them. Naruto recognized one of them as Fora and the other guy was very tall, taller than Naruto and Clark. 2 against 2, I like those odds. Naruto said as he and Clark walked down the street to meet them. Get inside. It's not safe. Clark said as the Smallville residents quickly ran inside buildings and locked the doors or just ran away to get away from them. Naruto clenched his fist as he and Clark stopped about 50 feet away from Fora and the other Kryptonian. Fora glared at them as she and the Kryptonian soldier Uthor were ready to kill Kal-El and Nal-Otto. Naruto was about to charge forward when his super hearing picked up distinct military radio chatter coming in fast. He and Clark turned to see 2 A-10 Warthog fighter jets coming straight for them. The fighters then fired their 30mm Gatling guns and fired straight down on Main Street in Smallville. Naruto and Clark quickly super sped out of the way, but the bullets managed to hit them and the force knocked them back a bit. Fora super sped to the side to avoid being hit, but Uthor didn't and was knocked back by the force of the bullet and into a light post. Naruto saw the fighters bank around, so he decided to focus his super hearing to figure out their orders. Thunder 11 good hit. Request immediate re-attack. Roger that, Guardian. Making heading at 2 to 12 degrees. Naruto heard Colonel Hardy say and the pilots respond. Uthor got back up and jumped forward, which then turned into a super jump as he leapt through the air and landed onto the front of one of the jets. He ripped open the cockpit and pulled out the pilot and squished his head using one hand. The plane then took a nosedive and crashed into the street. Naruto used his super V-zone and saw Uthor get up out of the plane wreckage, so he flew forward and knocked Uthor down the street while Clark charged into Fora and prevented her from downing the other plane. Uthor then got up in time to dodge a flying punch from Naruto and grabbed Naruto's right leg. He then smashed Naruto down into the street twice, making a large impact crater, and then threw him straight through the wall of the local Smallville coffee shop, the Talon. Naruto pulled himself out of the wall he was smashed into and saw Uthor standing in the street. He looked around and saw the patrons of the shop under their tables or behind chairs in fear. Naruto looked at the barista behind the counter. Sorry about that, Naruto said as he then flew out of the shop and punched Uthor in the face and then did another punch and then landed an uppercut that sent Uthor in the air. Naruto then flew up above Uthor and then smacked him back down into the ground and into a crater. Naruto then flew down and walked to the crater and got hit in the face with a large chunk of concrete. Ah! Naruto shouted as he rubbed his eyes to get rid of the concrete when he got tackled to the ground. He was then picked up and slammed down into the ground and then thrown through a parked car, causing an explosion. Rahh! Naruto shouted as he charged forward and grappled with Uthor, which was a mistake cause Uthor then flipped Naruto onto the ground. Uthor then punched Naruto into the ground and then raised his leg up to stomp, but Naruto kicked Uthor back. Naruto then landed a right and left cross and then kicked Uthor in the chest and knocked him away. Naruto then heard a crash behind him and saw a large crater with Fora on top of Clark, repeatedly punching him in the face. Naruto then blasted her with his heat vision, which knocked her back, which allowed Clark to kick her off and send her flying. Naruto then turned and was greeted with a car to the face as Uthor threw one at him and knocked him away. Naruto rolled on the ground as Clark ran over and helped him up. Ah, this is a lot harder than I thought, Naruto said as he and Clark saw that Uthor was still standing and looked like he could continue fighting. Naruto and Clark then turned and saw two military helicopters hovering above them, armed with Gatling guns and missile launchers. The choppers fired their Gatling guns and the gunners unleashed all the bullets they had on the three aliens, but the bullets were useless. They just bounced off or broke against their skin. Uthor then picked up a parked SUV and hurled it at the helicopters. One managed to move out of the way, but the other one wasn't as lucky and its tail rudder was destroyed, sending it spinning out of control. One of the gunners fell out of his seat and was falling, but Clark flew forward and caught him and put him safely on the ground. You okay? Clark asked as the guy nodded but then quickly reached for his gun. Clark pushed him away as Uthor charged forward and knocked Clark down the street. Naruto saw the chopper spinning out of control, so he quickly flew to catch it, but Fora jumped in the air and knocked him out of the sky with enough force that he flew 10 blocks away. The chopper crashed down as Fora watched it fall and then turned her attention to the human soldiers while Uthor was keeping Kal-El busy. She saw them close in on her with their human weapons but wasn't scared at all. She then leapt into the air and landed in the middle of the group of soldiers who unloaded their clips into her, but the bullets just bounced off. She then punched a soldier in the chest and knocked him straight into the ground and then elbowed another. She then grabbed one soldier by the throat and super sped to another soldier and grabbed him. She then threw the two soldiers into two more, knocking them down. All the while, the soldiers kept firing on the alien. Fora then super sped forward and punched three soldiers and then slammed another one into the pavement. She then kicked a piece of the downed plane into the path of three soldiers who were then squished. She looked and saw that Uthor was more than capable of handling Kal-El, so she turned her attention to the soldier who managed to crawl out of the helicopter wreckage. Colonel Hardy managed to get out of the downed helicopter and then grabbed his radio. Thunder 12, this is Guardian. I want you to put down everything you got just north of my position. This will be danger close. Colonel Hardy shouted as he saw the female alien looking straight at him, so he pulled out his SMG and loaded it. Copy that, danger close. Good luck, sir. The pilot said as Fora jumped in the air and landed in front of Colonel Hardy as he fired his gun at Fora until it was empty. Then pulled out his pistol and fired until he ran out of bullets and saw that it did nothing. Fora just looked at him and smirked. Hardy knew he was going to die and he would die fighting, so he stood up and took out his knife. Fora saw this and pulled out her own knife, which was 3 times bigger than his. A good death is its own reward, she said as she and Hardy stared each other down. Colonel Hardy then lunged forward as Fora did the same, but Naruto flew down straight at her and smashed her head straight into the ground. Naruto slid to a stop as Hardy saw the alien just save his life. Hardy then grabbed one of his injured men and walked away while Naruto walked towards Fora, whose breathing mask was damaged. With it damaged, she was getting a sensory overload from her exposure to Earth's environment and yellow sun, which was extremely painful. You will not win. For every human you save, we will kill 1,000,000 more. Fora said as she then grabbed her head in pain and fell to her knees. Naruto then walked forward to knock her out and send her to the Phantom Zone when all of a sudden, he saw a train flying straight at him. The train smashed into him and into the Walmart he was standing in front of and caused a big explosion. Fora turned and saw a missile coming straight at her, so she raised her hand to block it and got hit by the explosion. That combined with her pain from her sensory overload knocked her out. The A-10 fighters were about to fire more missiles when another Kryptonian ship flew by and blasted the 2 fighters to pieces. Clark saw the second ship appear and was about to go stop it when Uthor grabbed him and slammed him into the ground. He then threw him straight into the sky as the Kryptonian ship fired a concentrated energy blast at him. It knocked him through the air, into the Smallville train depot, which caused a huge explosion. The Kryptonian ship then landed down on the street and opened its door. Uthor walked forward and grabbed Fora and entered the ship, and as soon as they did, the ship then flew away. With the aliens gone, the army then focused on the 2 aliens they knew were still there. 10 armed soldiers walked into the destroyed Walmart as they saw destroyed home appliances and the train wreckage. The train then moved as Naruto came out from behind the wreckage and the soldiers had their guns set on him. Naruto was breathing a bit heavy from that strenuous fight as he saw the soldiers looking at him. Some began to lower their weapons, as they saw that this alien helped them during the fight. Naruto then walked forward as the soldiers parted to them him walk past. Naruto walked out of the destroyed Walmart and saw Colonel Hardy and the gunner that Clark saved walk up to him. This man is not our enemy, Hardy said as Naruto had a small smile on his face and nodded in gratitude. Thank you, Colonel, Naruto said as Hardy nodded back. Naruto's super hearing then picked up Chloe's voice from the Kryptonian caves, so he flew into the air and towards her as the soldiers saw him and the other alien fly away. Chloe, Jimmy and Lois had arrived back in the Kryptonian cave after the modifications to the spaceship were finished. Jor-El and Minato had instructed them on what to do to send the Kryptonians back to the Phantom Zone. The only problem was that they needed to get the ship close enough to Zod's ship. Chloe, Jimmy and Lois looked around the caves and saw a lot of holes and rubble around. Geez, what happened? Was there an earthquake when we were gone? Lois asked. Not exactly. They heard as they saw Naruto and Clark hover down into the caves. Smallville, Lois shouted. She ran up to Clark and hugged him as he hugged back. Where were you guys? Chloe asked as she hugged Naruto and Naruto hugged back. We didn't hear back from you, we were worried. What happened? Jimmy asked as he hugged Naruto and Clark, glad they were back. A lot happened. Zod lured us into a trap with that message. He knew we were here and tried to draw us out to join him or to get us out of his way. Naruto said as Chloe nodded. Well, like you said, we went to the fortress and I think we got something that can send Zod and his ship back to the Phantom Zone. Chloe said as they looked at the spaceship that used to belong to Namek and Ethier. It's just a tad bit heavy. You think you can lift it? James asked. It shouldn't be a problem, Clark said when they all felt a tremor in the ground. Oh, great. Now what? Naruto said. Line break XXXXX. In Zod's ship, he and all his followers just returned from Earth in their ships after Kal-El and Nal Auto returned from the Phantom Zone, forced Zod to retreat, managed to give Fora and Uthor a run for their money and prevented Zod from using the humans' own weapons against them. Zod and his men were walking back to the main bridge of the ship. What happened? One of the soldiers asked. Kal-El exposed a temporary weakness. What is our status? Zod asked as the head engineer walked over. Your original plan to use the humans' own weapons against them will not work without the computer and the Omegahedron. But our computers have finally finished calibrating the world engine and we have analyzed the perfect spots for terraforming. He said. How long will this process take? Zod asked. Once started, 12 hours. But the gravity field the world engine will produce will stop any human interference. Even Kal-El and Null Auto will be powerless once the terraforming commences. He said as Zod nodded. Release the world engine. Zod shouted as they imputed the commands in the computer and the world engine detached itself from the ship and flew down towards Earth. On Earth, back at the Mackenzie Airfield Base, General Swanwick and his analysts were monitoring the alien spaceship and saw that something new was happening. What just happened? Swanwick asked. The ship just split in two. Track 1 is heading east, Track 2 is deploying towards the southern hemisphere. An analyst said. How fast is that bogey moving? Swanwick asked. Approaching Mach 24 and accelerating. It looks like it's gonna impact somewhere in the South Indian Ocean. The analyst said as they watched the screen and saw the object move to its position and saw the main ship move towards Metropolis. The rest of the ship is descending. Another analyst said. Put it on the board, now. Swanwick said. Yes, sir. The analyst replied as the main screen showed the images of the ship moving towards the outskirts of Metropolis. They watched as the ship descended till it was about a mile above the ground but was high enough that people in Metropolis could see it. Zod saw his ship move into position and was then told that the world engine was in position. Bring the Phantom Drive online. Zod said as they powered up the ship's Phantom Drive and it shot a beam of energy straight down through the ground, which made its way through the Earth to the world engine on the other side of the world. The world engine then turned on as it began released gas and smoke and the gravity field around it began to increase. We are now connected to the world engine. One of Zod's engineers said. Initiate. Zod said as the engineer imputed the command. The world engine then began releasing its gravity field through the center of the Earth and to the main ship near Metropolis and the environment around both the ship and the world engine began to change into that of Krypton's. The gravity field was also increasing the gravity pull of the Earth and would continue until it was that of Krypton's. Back at the Mackenzie Airfield Base, everyone was looking at the screen and wondering what the aliens were doing. What did they just hit us with? Swanwick asked Dr. Hamilton. Some kind of gravity weapon. It's working in tandem with their ship. Somehow they're increasing the Earth's mass, and clouding the atmosphere with particulates. Dr. Hamilton said as he watched the screen and then realized what they were doing. Oh my god. They're terraforming. What's that? Captain Ferris asked. Planetary engineering. Modifying the Earth's atmosphere and topography. Dr. Hamilton said. They're turning Earth into Krypton. Swanwick said. But what happens to us? Captain Ferris asked. Based on these readings, there won't be an us. Dr. Hamilton said as one of the analysts answered the phone and stood up to address General Swanwick. General Swanwick, sir. I'm on with the control tower. Colonel Hardy's on his way in and he's got Superman and Red Sun in tow. The analyst said. Excuse me. Swanwick asked. The aliens, sir. That's what they were calling them. Superman and Red Sun. The analyst said as General Swanwick. Dr. Hamilton and his guards walked out to the airfield and saw Superman, Red Sun and Colonel Hardy's team return with a chopper carrying an alien ship. He saw the helicopter lower the ship onto a loading truck and Superman and Red Sun hover to the ground. We have a plan, General. Naruto said. Is that what I think it is? Dr. Hamilton asked as he pointed to the spaceship. It's a ship that one of Zod's followers used. Naruto said. This ship is powered by something called a Phantom Drive. We managed to make some modifications to it. The Phantom Drive bends space and time. Zod's ship uses the same technology, and if we can make the two drives collide with one another, a singularity can be created. Dr. Hamilton said, as he finished Superman's sentence. Like a black hole. General Swanwick asked as Naruto nodded. Exactly. So when we open that black hole, they'll be sucked in and have no way to come back. Naruto said. So you want us to bomb them with that? Hamilton asked. General, that craft maxes out 17,000 pounds. We can drop it from AC-17. It's a viable plan. Colonel Hardy said. But Red Sun and I need to stop the machine over the Indian Ocean. If we don't, the gravity field will make it impossible to drop the ship. Clark said as General Swanwick nodded. Good luck. Swanwick said as Clark and Naruto flew straight into the sky and flew towards the Indian Ocean to stop the world engine while General Swanwick and the army prepped AC-17 and an escort of jets to accompany them. Line break XXXXX. Superman and Red Sun flew into the air and through the upper atmosphere of the Earth and went supersonic until they neared the South Indian Ocean. They then flew down and saw the world engine. It was pumping out dark clouds of dust which began acting as clouds and began forming lightning and crackling thunder. They saw the water in the immediate vicinity of the world engine was floating, and as the gravity field expanded, more of the ocean began to rise. Superman and Red Sun flew straight down to the world engine and through the cloud of smoke it was producing and immediately began coughing. The air around the world engine was toxic and dirty and immediately began to interfere with Superman and Red Sun's focus. They quickly cleared their throats and focused on the world engine and the expanding gravity field which they could feel. They could feel the gravity getting heavier and that it was taking much more strain and strength to fly. Superman and Red Sun were about to blast the world engine with their heat vision when a large compartment of the world engine opened up to reveal a pool of metallic-looking liquid metal. It then formed a dozen of metal claws which immediately shot out to try and grab them. Superman and Red Sun then immediately began to fly as the claws chased after them. They flew up and swerved around as the claws were like homing rockets and stayed right on their tail. One grabbed Superman and wrapped around him, but he broke free and then smashed another claw to pieces with a punch. Red Sun flew down towards the ground as the claws chomped and tried to grab him as they missed and grabbed up chunks of the ground. Red Sun kept flying until one claw grabbed his leg and smashed him into the ground. Another claw was about to impale him, but Red Sun used his heat vision and blasted it to pieces and then broke himself free. He then flew straight up and smashed through another claw and flew around to keep moving, but he saw Clark get grabbed and brought straight up into the thickest cloud of smoke. Clark coughed and tried to break free, but he couldn't concentrate in the smoke. The claw dragged Clark down and smashed him into one of the legs of the world engine and then tossed him right into the gravity beam. He was then brought down to the ground, under the heavy gravitational pull, and was stuck there. Red Sun flew up as all the claws focused their attention on him, so he used his freeze breath and froze them before they could get to him. He then smashed them to pieces and blasted the world engine with his heat vision. His heat vision hit the machine, but the metal was extremely durable and tough, so he had to increase the power and intensity. Arg! Red Sun shouted as his heat vision changed from two beams of heat coming from his eyes to a single focused beam of energy that began to melt the metal of the world engine. While Red Sun was attacking the world engine, Superman grunted and groaned under the extreme gravitational push as he used all the strength he could muster to get up and make it to his knees. He struggled under the gravity as he raised his arm up and managed to stand on his 2 feet. Superman then managed to stand up straight and with all his might, flew straight up and was planning on smashing straight through the world engine. Superman shouted as he flew through the air, up the gravity pulse, and smashed straight through the world engine and came out through the exhaust port. RAHHH. Red Sun shouted as his heat vision managed to melt through the armor of the world engine and hit the delicate wires and electrical system. That, combined with Superman barreling right through the world engine, caused it to explode and stopped the terraforming process. The wreckage of the world engine then collapsed into the South Indian Ocean as the area that the world engine had affected was going back to normal. Naruto exhaled as he and Clark managed to stop Zod from terraforming Earth. Naruto then flew down to check up on Clark, who was blown away from the world engine explosion and had crashed into a large rock near the shore. Naruto flew down to Clark and saw him slowly sitting up. "Clark, you okay?" Naruto asked as he checked on his brother. "I'm fine. Just tired," Clark said as he sat down to catch his breath. The sun then peeked out from the disappearing clouds of pollution as the sun's rays began to recharge Naruto and Clark and was aiding in Clark's healing. "All right. We'll rest and recharge before we head back to Metropolis," Naruto said as Clark nodded. Line break XXXXX. While Clark and Naruto were talking to the military and stopping the world engine, Zod stood on the deck of his command ship as he watched the gravity field expand. His ship was on the outskirts of a human city, but the human military had arrived with their tanks and weapons to try and stop them, but the gravity field was too powerful. The humans were at their mercy. The wreckage of the military vehicles was floating in the gravity field as it slowly began to expand to the nearby city. He saw the humans desperately try and flee, but there was nowhere they would be safe from him. Zod then turned his attention to one of his monitors that was scanning the planet, and it located the Fortress of Knowledge located in the northern part of the planet. "Fora, assemble a small ship. It's time to greet an old friend," Zod said as Fora nodded and left. Zod's small ship flew through the air and landed outside the Fortress of Solitude. Zod and Fora then exited the ship in their environment suits that had oxygen masks that fed them the oxygen levels they were used to on Krypton. Zod decided to deactivate his suit's environment system and was immediately hit with a sensory overload like before. He then closed his eyes and concentrated, and soon the ringing and headache disappeared. Zod looked around him and saw that his senses were adjusting to the Earth environment and radiation. He then had Fora do the same thing and she was hit with a sensory overload just like Zod. She fell to her knees and struggled with the pain as she then tried to focus, and eventually the pain went away. Zod then helped her up and nodded to her as she nodded back. He and Fora walked through the snow into the fortress when they saw the large doors slam shut and a hologram of Jor-El appear before them. You will go no further. Jor-El Saeed as Zod stepped forward. You still haven't given up on lecturing me, even in death. Zod said. I will not let you into the fortress, Zod. Its knowledge and power wasn't meant for you. Zod said. This fortress is the last remnants of Krypton and our people will begin again from here. Fora, open that door. Zod said as Fora rushed towards the door to bash it open. Once she punched it, the door shocked her and knocked her back. I am in control of the fortress and I will not let you in. Jor-El Saeed. For now. But the planet will soon be under my control and you will kneel before me or perish like you did before. Zod said. That isn't necessary, Zod. There isn't need for violence. Our people can coexist with the humans. Jor-El Saeed. So we can suffer through years of adapting to this planet's environment like your son. The humans are a flawed, barbaric people. This will be mercy. Zod said. I will not let the memory of Krypton be stained with the genocide of a people. Jor-El Saeed. You cannot stop me. My men are skilled and my technology vastly outweighs anything the humans have. Zod said. You are talking about genocide. Jor-El Saeed. Yes, and I'm arguing its merits with a ghost. Zod said. We're both ghosts, Zod, can't you see that? The Krypton you're clinging onto is gone. Jor-El Saeed. Fora, prep the ship. I've grown tired of this nuisance. Zod said as Fora nodded. My son and Null Otto, or twice the men you ever were. And he will stop you, I can promise you that. Jor-El Saeed as Zod walked up to him. Tell me. You have Jor-El's memories, his conscious, can you experience his pain? I will grind your son's bones to dust beneath my heel, I will restore Krypton atop his destroyed bones. And then I will take this fortress, and destroy the last remaining remnants of the House of El. Zod said as he and Fora left to go back to the ship. Back with the US military, the C-17 was loaded with the alien spacecraft which was going to be flown by Colonel Hardy, and Dr. Hamilton would accompany them to activate the ship. The C-17 took off and was escorted by a group of F-16s and on its way to Metropolis. The military were en route to Metropolis and could see the city closing in, but they also saw their target. Zod's ship was still active and the gravity field was expanding. Colonel Hardy increased the C-17's altitude while the escort of fighter jets flew straight over the city and towards the ship. Lightning 1 to Northcom, we are nearing the target. Request permission to engage. The lead pilot asked over the comms. Northcom to Lightning 1, you are clear to engage. Send battle damage assessment when able. Out. Swanwick replied. The group of fighter jets fired a volley of missiles at the ship and they flew straight at it, with some hitting the floating debris field surrounding the ship. The ones that managed to make it through got close to the ship but then flew off course and hit the ground or hit buildings and streets in Metropolis. The group of fighters quickly banked around for another volley. Avionics are going haywire. The gravity field is pulling our missiles down. We have got to get closer. Northcom Lightning 1 shouted as the planes flew around to get another shot. Bystanders and civilians in Metropolis saw the attempted military attack and the missiles accidentally hitting civilian targets spread panic to an already terrifying situation. The planes flew in closer and released another volley of missiles, but the gravity field did the same thing, and this time, the planes were not caught in the gravity field. Jets were thrown off course and smashed into the floating debris. Some planes crashed into one another while others crashed into buildings. The C-17 was closing in on Metropolis airspace and Colonel Hardy saw the target straight ahead. Northcom, this is Guardian, we are nearing target airspace. Are we cleared to make the drop? Hardy asked. Negative, Guardian. Gravity field is still active. Swanwick said. Damn it. Hardy said as they maintained course to the ship with only 2 rear F-16s as their escorts. They watched the ship and the gravity field expand, and then a few minutes passed when the gravity beam was disabled. Superman and Red Sun must have done their job. They did it. Northcom, this is Guardian. We are passing through phase line red. We are good to go. Hardy said. Godspeed, Guardian. Arm the package. You are cleared hot. Swanwick said as Hardy nodded and then turned on the C-17's intercom system. Prepare the package. Hardy said as his men prepared. They opened up the docking bay door and unhooked the spaceship harnesses in order to push it when they were given the signal. Loadmaster, is the package ready and are we ready to drop? Hardy asked. Affirmative, Guardian. The Loadmaster responded as Hardy lined up for the drop. They were now flying over the city and closing in on the target when all of a sudden, their two escort jets were blown to pieces and destroyed. The soldiers looked to see one of the alien ships right on their tail. Guardian, we've got a bogey. Loadmaster shouted as Zod and Fora were in the ship and looked at the human ship in front of them. Fora, target that aircraft. Zod said as Fora targeted the ship. Target acquired. Fora said. Before Zod could fire and destroy the ship, Superman flew towards the ship at Mach 8 and barreled right into the ship and caused it and him to crash land somewhere in the city. They then saw Red Sun fly up to the C-17 and land in the plane's cargo hold. Red Sun then nodded and walked up to the spaceship and lifted it up. Red Sun lifted up the ship with a grunt, because it was made of Kryptonian metal and much heavier than a regular spaceship. Red Sun grabbed it and flew out of the C-17 with it. Guardian, Red Sun has the package. Divert course. Loadmaster said as Colonel Hardy looked outside and saw Red Sun fly ahead of them, carrying the ship with him. Roger that, diverting course. Hardy said as he diverted the plane's course to turn around. Red Sun then flew up and through the ship at Zod's spaceship, and as they neared each other, they began to react to one another. Beams of electricity began to explode out from both ships, and when they made contact with one another, Zod's ship began to implode. Soon, a black hole appeared where the ship was, and Zod's ship and the other ship was sucked into the portal and then soon began sucking in cars and parts of buildings. Red Sun flew down to the street, and on his way, he helped save a family of 3 who were pulled in by the black hole. He grabbed the mother, father and daughter as they held on tight. Hold on. Red Sun shouted as he flew as fast as he could, feeling himself getting pulled in by the black hole. Rahhhhh. Red Sun pushed himself faster and stronger than he had before and managed to get out of the black hole's gravity pull. He finally made it away from the black hole and was flying down to the street when the black hole closed and Zod's ship and his followers were back in the Phantom Zone and never coming back. Red Sun flew down the street as the people who weren't immediately evacuated walked out into the streets to see the alien ship gone and to see the flying man who saved them. Red Sun landed on the sidewalk and put the family down, and they immediately all hugged each other. Red Sun smiled as the father looked at him. You saved us. Thank you. He said. No problem. It's my job. Red Sun said. Boo mmm. Red Sun turned to something, smash into a building and fly through Metropolis. He focused his vision and saw it was Clark, who was then smashed midair by Fora and then Zod, who followed her. Get to safety. Red Sun shouted as he flew up into the air and towards Clark. He saw Fora punch Clark through the air and Zod close-lined him. Naruto flew straight at them as Zod jumped in the air to punch Clark but was knocked out of the air as Naruto tackled him through 3 parked cars and then threw him down the street. Civilians and bystanders saw the fight and were both amazed and frightened, with some taking out their cameras and recording the fight. Get out of here. Naruto shouted as Zod charged forward and knocked him down the street. Naruto got up to see Zod walking towards him. You and Kal-El took my future from me. The future of Krypton is now destroyed. So I will take everyone you love from you. These humans you protect, I will kill them all and then crush your skull beneath my boot. Zod said as Naruto glared at him and fired his heat vision, which knocked Zod back and into a building. You talk too much. Naruto said as he flew forward and into the building to see Zod was gone. He was then blindsided as Zod super sped to his right and knocked him out of the building. Naruto got back to his feet and saw Zod charge straight at him, so Naruto flew to the side as Zod smashed into the street. Naruto then flew forward and kicked Zod back as Zod skidded to a stop. Naruto then super sped forward and lashed out with 3 punches, but Zod blocked all of them and punched Naruto across the face and knocked him to the ground. Zod then kicked Naruto across the face and knocked him into a car. Naruto then got up to duck under one of Zod's punches, which Naruto was able to counter with a punch of his own to Zod's stomach. Zod was knocked back as Naruto followed up that punch with another one that knocked him to the ground. Naruto then hit him again and then grabbed him and threw him in the air and into a building. Naruto then flew after Zod to see him and Clark fighting in the streets and Clark get hit by an uppercut and knocked up a building. Naruto was about to go help when he was blasted out of the air and into a building. Naruto turned to see Fora on the ground and her eyes glowing red. Fora then fired another volley of heat vision as Naruto fired his own to meet hers. Naruto flew out of the hole in the building as his heat vision battled hers in a spectacle of red light and heat. Naruto then stopped and flew straight down as Fora's heat vision smashed into the building. Naruto flew down to the street as Fora's heat vision blasted cars, street signs, lamp posts and the ground, but she couldn't turn fast enough to hit Naruto before he punched her down the street. Naruto then followed up and smashed her through the streets and then threw her into the air. He then flew up to smack her back down to the ground, but she turned in mid-air and kicked him across the face and knocked him down to the street in front of the Daily Planet building, making a small crater. Naruto stood up out of the crater to see a lot of the Daily Planet employees who were evacuating the building taking pictures. Naruto then looked up to see Fora was floating in the sky. She must have learned to fly. Raw. Naruto shouted as he flew towards her, and when he got close she punched him across the face and then hit him in the stomach and neck before slamming him down into a building. Naruto immediately got back up and flew after her as she flew through the city with Naruto right on her tail. Naruto fired volleys of his heat vision to knock her out of the sky, but she kept dodging. Naruto saw her fly down a street and knew a shortcut to cut her off, so he flew down another street and as Fora flew the street but was then tackled out of the air and smashed through a building and knocked to the ground. Naruto then quickly got up and super sped forward to tackle her and knocked her to the ground. He then punched her in the face twice, but Fora grabbed his arm as he went for the third punch. She then head-butted him in the face and knocked him back. She then punched him across the face, kicked him in the back of the leg sending him to his knee, and she then got behind him and began to choke him out. Naruto choked as he tried to break her hold. He stood up and flew backwards and slammed her into a building, but she still kept her grip. Naruto then slammed her into a building again, and then slammed her onto the ground, but she wouldn't let go as Naruto began to feel his airways constrict. It's over, Naruto. Your time on Earth has made you weak like the humans. Fora said as she began to squeeze even more as Naruto kept slamming her into buildings to try and get her off, and now he started elbowing her but she wouldn't let go. Your sense of morality is an evolutionary flaw. You may share our blood but you are not a Kryptonian. Fora said as Naruto kept struggling when he saw something. You may be right. Labored breathing, but I've got something, you don't. Naruto said. And what would that be? Fora asked as she kept squeezing. Friends. Now. Naruto shouted as Chloe stepped out of the alley and opened up a small lead box which held a chunk of green kryptonite. As soon as the lead box was opened, the green kryptonite began to affect Naruto and a surprised Fora. Ah, you. Naruto groaned in pain as he and Fora fell to the ground and could feel themselves dying on the inside. What's happening? Fora shouted as she felt her cells exploding from the inside. Meet, kryptonite. Naruto managed to say as he felt the pain getting worse. Chloe slowly walked forward as Jimmy and Lois ran out of the alley and grabbed Naruto and pulled him away from the kryptonite. Jimmy, the crystal, Naruto said as he looked to his pocket and Jimmy nodded. He reached into Naruto's pocket and took out his Phantom Zone crystal. Jimmy then ran over to Fora and touched her with the crystal, and she was soon sucked into the crystal and transported to the Phantom Zone. Chloe then shut the box as Naruto exhaled. Ah. Naruto said as he felt himself getting better now that the kryptonite was gone. Thanks. No problem. I figured with an army of Kryptonians, having some kryptonite would be a good idea. Chloe said as Naruto smiled. Where's Clark? Lois asked as they heard a loud boom from the sky and saw Zod and Clark in a locked fight as they flew towards the earth with dozens of flaming pieces of wreckage coming down as well. Naruto used his supervision and saw the Wayne Enterprises logo. Zod and Clark must have taken their battle to space and smashed a Wayne Enterprises satellite. I got him. Naruto said as he was about to fly, but Chloe stopped him. Naruto, you've got to stop that wreckage. It'll wreck the city. Chloe said as Naruto nodded. I'm on it. Naruto said as he flew into the air and towards the falling wreckage. Naruto flew into the air and held his fists out and smashed right through a piece of the falling satellite. He then banked around and concentrated his heat vision as much as he could into a focused heat blast and obliterated 4 more pieces of the falling satellite. He then smashed into another piece of wreckage as he saw 3 more pieces heading towards the LexCorp building. He then flew as fast as he could and used his freeze breath to freeze the pieces of wreckage, and then he barreled through them and reduced them to little frozen pieces of ice. Naruto then stopped in the air and saw that all the pieces of wreckage from the satellite were destroyed, and then looked down at the Metropolis train station and saw the roof was destroyed and Clark had Zod in a chokehold. Time slowed down as Naruto saw Zod ready his heat vision to try and kill a family of 3, so Naruto flew down to the train station and landed in front of the family as Zod fired his heat vision. Arg! Naruto shouted as he shielded the family from the blasts of heat. Run! The family ran for cover as Naruto took the force of the heat vision and began skidding backwards across the floor from the force of the blast. Naruto then looked at Clark, who nodded back. My father sends his regards. Clark said as he pulled out his Phantom Zone crystal and touched Zod, and he was sent back to the Phantom Zone with no way to leave. Naruto fell to the ground as he felt the sting from that heat vision. Clark walked over and helped Naruto back to his feet as they took a sigh of relief knowing that the threat of Zod was over. Nicely done. Naruto said as Clark nodded. Yeah, it's over. Clark said as people who were still in the train station walked out and looked at Naruto and Clark. Should we be concerned and leave? Naruto asked as the people began to cheer for them, shouting out thanks and gratitude for saving them. No rush in leaving. Clark said as Naruto smiled. Line break XXXXX. 2 weeks had passed after the Kryptonian invasion in Metropolis, and the entire world realized that they weren't the only beings in the galaxy or the most advanced or powerful. The Kryptonian arrival put the governments of the world to try and retrieve any pieces of the alien wreckage or any kind of alien remnants for their own purposes. They also began to refocus their resources onto government programs and sections that dealt with the super-powered or anything alien-related after the reveal of the Kryptonians and the 2 Earth-raised Kryptonians who saved Metropolis. Naruto and Clark were now known to the world as Red Sun and Superman, the Men of Steel. After Zod and his forces were defeated, Naruto spent the entire week afterward using their powers to help clean up and fix Metropolis. They repaired buildings, helped repave the streets, transported people to hospitals, and stopped criminals who took advantage of the situation. With Naruto and Clark working together, the entire city was rebuilt in 9 days. The people of Metropolis were grateful and cheering for their heroes, which was only boosted by the awesome article Chloe and Lois wrote and the pictures Jimmy took. There was even talks that they were being nominated for Pulitzers. Even though Naruto and Clark did a lot of good, there were still a majority of people who were afraid of them. There were anti-alien haters that began to speak out against Superman and Red Sun, and many people in law enforcement and the military didn't like the idea of 2 god-like powered people running around without any means to stop them except for their word as good people. One of the military people who had experience with Red Sun and Superman, General Swanwick, was driving in the desert near a satellite communication station and on their way back to a military base with Captain Ferris driving. It was a simple and quiet drive as they made their way back to the base when all of a sudden, a Predator drone was sent crashing down to the road. Ferris saw this and swerved the car to a stop as they saw the puff of smoke and sand from the Predator wreckage. They got out of the car and walked forward as the smoke and sand dissipated and they saw Red Sun standing amidst the wreckage of the drone. He stood there with a slight smile and his arms crossed. Are you f***ing stupid? Swanwick shouted. It's one of your surveillance drones. Red Sun said. That's a $12 million piece of hardware. Swanwick shouted. It was. And they'll keep piling up if you and the military keep trying to track me and Superman. So stop. Red Sun said. Then I'll ask the obvious question, how do we know you won't one day act against America's interest? Swanwick asked. I grew up in Kansas, General. That's about as American as it gets. Red Sun said as Swanwick sighed. Look, Superman and I are here to help, but it has to be on our own terms. And you have to convince Washington of that. Even if I were willing to try, what makes you think they'd listen? Swanwick asked. I don't know, General. Guess I'll just have to trust you. Red Sun said as he turned around and flew away. Swanwick sighed as he turned around to see Captain Ferris with a smile on her face. What are you smiling about, Captain? Swanwick asked. Nothing, sir. I just think he's kind of hot. Ferris said with a smile as Swanwick nodded. Get in the car, Captain. Swanwick said. Yes, sir. Ferris said as they got in the car and left. Back in Smallville, Naruto, Clark, Martha, Chloe, Lois and Jimmy were at the Smallville cemetery as Naruto, Clark and their mom wanted to visit Jonathan's grave. In light of everything that happened, they wanted to pay him a visit. Naruto and Clark walked up to their father's grave with their mother and laid down some flowers. He always believed you boys were meant for greater things. And that when the day came, your shoulders would be able to bear the weight. Martha said. Yeah, I just wish he could have been here to see it finally happen. Clark said as they looked down at their father's tombstone. He saw it, Clark. Believe me. Even when you boys didn't see it in yourselves, he saw it. Martha said as Naruto and Clark smiled. So, what are you boys gonna do when you're not out there saving the world? Have you given any thought to that? I think that's more of a question for Clark, Mom. Naruto said. I've actually got a job interview. Clark said. Really, where? Naruto asked as they walked back to Chloe, Lois and Jimmy. The Daily Planet. Chloe said. Yeah, Chloe and I were able to talk to Perry and grease the wheels a bit. And we also submitted some of the articles you wrote back for the torch. Perry was pretty impressed. Lois said as Clark walked up to her and smiled. He looped his arm around her waist as she hugged him and he kissed her head. It'll be nice to have you at the planet. Jimmy said. Yeah, and it'll be the perfect place to keep my ear to the ground. A place where people won't look twice and I can be informed of everything that happens. Clark said. It'll keep you busy. We'll just keep perfecting your appearance so people won't mistake Clark Kent for Superman. Lois said. I guess that means Metropolis gets Superman. So what about you, Naruto? You sticking around here too? Chloe asked as Naruto smiled. As much as I would like to, I think Metropolis is set with just one of us. Besides, there are a lot of other cities out there and the entire world will need our help from now on. I go where my job sends me. Naruto said. Quote. Cell phone ringing. Naruto took his phone out of his pocket and saw it was his boss. Oh, speak of the devil. Excuse me. Naruto said as he answered his phone. Yes. Yes, sir. Oh, well thank you sir. Yes, sir. Sure. I don't mind. Wait, how much a raise? Okay. When do you want me to move? Okay. I'll get ready. Thanks. Yes, sir. I'll keep you updated. Naruto said as he hung up. What was that about? Chloe asked. That was my boss. He's been impressed with my work over the last few years that he promoted me to supervisor of the books division. Naruto said as everyone smiled. Wow, congratulations. Chloe said as she and Martha hugged him. So what does that mean? Martha asked. It means I've got a lot more work. My boss wants me to supervise the Starling City branch as head supervisor. I'm basically in charge. Naruto said as they smiled. Nice. Jimmy said. I guess that means you're heading to Starling City. Lois said. Yup, I'm leaving in a few days. I'll head there, find a place to live and get to work. Naruto said. I wonder how the vigilante of Starling City will take to having Red Sun in his city. Chloe said. I'm sure it'll be fine. What's the worst that can happen? Naruto asked. End of chapter 1.